We're going to call our January 11th, 2018 regular assembly meeting to order. It's about 6 o'clock on January 11th, coincidence there, and we are in the Mona Lisa Drugstore Assembly Chambers. Clerk, would you, let's see, I'll start with an on-secretary indication. And we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join me in standing. This evening's indication is compliments of Danny Snyder, the Fairbanks City Clerk. I liked it so much when I heard it Monday that I asked her if we could have it this evening. This new year, we seek guidance and wisdom as we continue serving the Fairbanks community. May we always be humble and ever grateful for the many gifts we have been given, and may we strive to improve ourselves and one another through communication and understanding. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now, Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to note for the record that Mr. Quist is excused this evening. Mr. Lajewski? Mr. Tackey?
Here.
Mr. Cooper?
Here.
Ms. Major?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Lawrence?
Here.
Mr. Lajewski?
Here.
Perfect. You? And Ms. Dodge? Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And I have an agenda. Let us look. So next we have a safety announcement. In case of emergency, we have 3 exits. We have double doors we came in through. We have the door there behind the pillar that you can go out to the left. And we have another door behind the pillar over there. And again, you can go out and go to the right. And it may be that you have a mirror image of my right and left when you get there, but you'll find your way. I predict. Mayor Council, I understand you have an Employee of the Month proclamation.
We do. It's that time. Once a month we get to recognize some of the superstars here at the Fairbanks North Star Borough. We have a few of those. And this is my favorite time because I don't pick this. This is by the other employees and colleagues select the Employee of the Month. And so this month, I'll just read the proclamation. We'll get to who you are in just a second. So whereas each month employees of the Fairbanks North Star Borough nominate a fellow employee to be recognized as Employee of the Month, and whereas Fred Rohn, Computer Coordinator 2 in the Computer Services Department, began his employment with the Fairbanks North Star Borough in December 1988. Which is the same year I started here, so we're old cronies here. I'm glad you finally got this award, Fred. You deserved it years ago. Whereas, in his position, Fred has distinguished himself through his remarkably high level of initiative, professionalism, and his vast job knowledge. And whereas Fred exemplifies a courteous, enthusiastic, kind employee whose keen sense of responsibility has a very positive impact on his department and the borough as a whole. And whereas Fred is an energetic, diligent, and gregarious, I think there's a capital G on gregarious here, employee who can be relied upon to do an outstanding job every time. The quality of his work is second to none. And whereas Fred is an exceptionally strong team player who never hesitates to jump in, take on new challenges, and assist in the successful completion of a myriad of projects and assignments, and whereas Fred's coworkers have expressed their considerable appreciation for his perpetual smile, there's capital P on that, perpetual smile, and his wonderful sense of humor, is truly a delight to work with, and he's held in the highest regard. So now, therefore, I, Carl W. Castle, Mayor of Fairbanks North Star Borough, by the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim Fred Rohn Employee of the Month for January 2018. Congratulations, Fred.
I'd like to thank you, the Mayor and the Administration and the Assembly for the recognition, but most of all, I guess I need to thank my coworkers. I work with a diverse group of people in all the different departments from Public Works, library, landfill, animal control, and my success is because of all my coworkers, so I'd like to thank them.
Super. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Fred. We'd really like to add our congratulations and thank you for your smile that you share broadly with the community and with your fellow employees. With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Does anyone request removal of items from the consent agenda and any other procedural motions? I see no one raising their hand. Does anyone need to declare a possible conflict of interest for items on the consent agenda? See no one raising their hand. So that's going to take us to citizens' comments. And we have 2 types of citizens' comments at this time in the evening. We have, we'll start with citizens' comments A, and this is for citizens wishing to speak on agenda items not scheduled for public hearing. That includes memorandums, bid awards, unfinished business, items postponed from previous meetings, reconsideration, or notice of intent to rescind, resolutions or ordinances being advanced to a public hearing on a different date. Each person's comments are limited to 3 minutes. I have one person signed up, Mr. Mike Prax. If you'd like to come take one of the empty seats, and if anyone else wishes to testify on items on the agenda but not available for public comment, now would be the time to take the other seat. Mr. Prax, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Prox, 1015 Meadowrue, North Pole, and kind of caught me off guard. I thought they started at 6:30. My memory is getting a little failing, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to speak on Resolution 2018-01 opposing the aircraft registration fees, and I think you got a long, sad email that I sent that was my research into the statutes regarding this, and I was really mostly concerned about that the State Attorney General, I guess, was taking a very broad view of the statutes, to say the least. And I think it is very important, especially in times like this, where there's a lot of pressure on the governments at all levels to raise new funds and whatnot, to really emphasize the need to stay conservatively within statutory authority, not trying to, if you will, see how much we can get away with. And so that's my primary concern with that. And I think it clearly doesn't stay within the statute that they even cite for the primary authority of collecting data, because the second part of the statute is that the data can't duplicate data that the department already collects, and they collect data from the FAA, or they certainly can collect data from the FAA registration records. They're adding this, they say, for the purpose of collecting aircraft basing information, and this all gets kind of technical in federal regulations and whatnot. And it is somewhat true. It is true that the aircraft registration required by the FAA does not ask for basing data, but the FAA wants that data not from the aircraft owners, but from the airport operator. And the state, for 9/10 of the airplanes that are affected by this, well, no, that's not true. For 9/10 of the airplanes parked on the state runways, they can get this off of parking records. And they're looking at really a matter of a few dozen airplanes that are out parked on bush airports, and they want to impose this requirement on everyone else. And then that does fall. What they really want to do is raise money. Don't blame them for that. But that falls disproportionately on aircraft owners within the borough. And I'm kind of out of time, so I'm really here to listen and ask and answer questions if you have any about it, because I spent a lot of time on it.
Thank you. Let's see if there are questions for you, Mr. Braggs. Okay, let's start with Mr. Lawrence and then we'll go to Mr. Ledesky.
Mr. Parks, I was reading the resolution, and I also read an editorial in today's paper, and I guess it was in the paper, and not in the resolution, that the state spends something like $40 million a year maintaining airports in this state. In your research, I'm guessing the vast majority of that $40 million is for Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau airports. Is that correct? Or is that
No, actually, that is not correct. Anchorage, it's for the statewide airport system. That's somewhat of a misnomer. The Fairbanks and Anchorage airports are they're operated by the state, but they're part of the international airport system.
So
and they're self-supporting. Fairbanks and Anchorage are.
So that $40 million is primarily for the small community bush, airstrips around the state.
And not quite. You'd think so. There's two classes of airports. What they call Part 139. That's for airplanes that are 30 passengers and above. Fairbanks International is a Part 139 airport. Anchorage, but the hub airports, according to the DOT, there's 19 of those. I don't know them all, but like the Bethel, Nome, Kotzebue, where Alaska Airlines goes in, and Ravens -8s. The other 180 or however many are not built for airplanes that big, and the majority of their cost is for maintaining these hub airports. It gets really kind of technical and complicated. I wouldn't begin to say I'm qualified to tell the DOT exactly how to lower the budget, but that's ultimately what we've got to do. And because the gap is in these statewide airports of about, I forget the numbers, but in rough numbers, 20 to 30 million a year that comes out of the general fund, and about 2/3 of that goes to these hub airports. So it's going to be difficult and contentious to try and raise this out of any kind of a tax. We really have to. The next step is sit down and start talking to each other and figure out how to get a handle on this.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Ledesky.
Well, I guess I was going to ask, what do you think is going to happen, lawsuit-wise, if these regulations are implemented?
Well, I would think that it is virtually assured that there would be a lawsuit. I can't afford to do it by myself, but I would start looking around for people the next day to support that, because from what I've seen from the AG's office, and of course that's just a kind of, if you will, a preliminary analysis and whatnot, but it seems very clear to the ordinary person reading the statutes that this is outside the statutes. Who knows when you get to the court what's going to happen, but I would say it's virtually a certainty that there will be a lawsuit on this.
Thank you. Let's see if there are any other questions. Yes, Mr. Ledesky.
Were you the person who wrote the first draft of this resolution?
Was.
Okay, and I'm partly asking, I got to phrase this as a question. So, would it be appropriate for the Assembly to consider much of your comments highly complimentary to a staff report?
Well, I suppose so. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Parks, if this regulation deleted the requirement to pay $150 or $250 tax or fee, I'm guessing you would still oppose, you'd still support this resolution and oppose this regulation.
Yeah, I really would, because it imposing the registration requirement is kind of a whole separate thing. If you look in the state statutes, the legislature has told us we have to register our cars. But now we have the department going down and telling individuals they have to do something. And in fact, that authority was in statute under a 1937 law or something like that, that the department could say when, if there was an emergency or military necessity. The department determined that, but it was the statute that said they could set up a registration program. And I think that that's essential, that we can't have the department going around the legislature imposing that sort of a requirement on individuals. So yeah, the money's one thing, but the requirement is important, because it can always raise the fee. So you might as well start it out, and have that discussion with the legislature. Maybe it's a good idea, I don't know. But.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Ledesky.
Yeah, through your support of this resolution, you're not, specifically through your support to the resolution, your opinions otherwise may be something else, but through the support of this resolution, I want to clarify, you're not telling DOT that they can't raise money to pay for airports. You're objecting to essentially how they're doing it in this particular case.
Yeah, correct. The DOT still has the ability to raise money through landing fees, parking fees, fuel flowage fees, things like that. But they just don't have the authority to tell me I can't fly my airplane, because I don't use state airports virtually at all. I have my airplane by my house on a strip I built, and I go out and land on sandbars. I don't go to state airports, so they shouldn't have, the department should not have the authority to tell me I can't fly my airplane. That's up to the FAA and the legislature if they want to.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. Braggs. We appreciate your testimony and your service. Anyone else that wishes to speak on Citizens Comments A, items on the agenda but not scheduled for public hearing? Seeing no one else coming forward, we're going to close Citizens Comments A, and we'll move on to Citizens Comments B. And that is, this is the section to speak on any items not scheduled on the agenda. Each person's comments are again limited to 3 minutes, so this is anything other than anything that appears on the agenda. And I have Mr. McCrae first. And if there's anyone else that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda at all, now is the time to come and take the other empty seat. Mr. McRae, your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Scott McRae. I'm here in my capacity as Director of Tourism for Explore Fairbanks, and I reside at 2965 Westgate Place. And just here to give an update on some of the exciting activities happening within the tourism department at Explore Fairbanks. In November of last year, I led a statewide tourism industry sales mission made up largely of Fairbanks visitor industry partners to Taiwan and China. This is the second year in a row that Explore Fairbanks has led these endeavors. This is a good example of one of the realities we face by the extreme cuts that have been made to the state tourism marketing program, whereas in the past, the state tourism marketing program had contractors that we work with in the core international markets that would normally organize sales missions such as this one. With no state presence in those markets, it's up to us at the destination marketing organization level, whether it be Explore Fairbanks or Visit Anchorage, to continue to have a presence in those important markets. The benefit being when we lead it, as is the case with this one, we get to put a stronger emphasis on our region, so the legwork and putting it together has a tremendous return on investment. So this year's mission started off in Taipei, Taiwan, where we conducted travel agent trainings and participated in the Taipei International Travel Fair. Now, while we've been actively pursuing the China market for the past 3 years, the Taiwan market is one that we've had a pretty strong presence in for well over a decade, and it's because of that presence and our endeavors there that led to China Airlines launching those charter flights that we received from Taipei to Fairbanks about 3 years ago. The last 2 charters occurred in September of last year. They had a total, between the 2 charters, a total of 591 passengers that came to the Golden City. So from Taiwan, we went to mainland China, and over the course of 5 days, we did travel agent trainings in the cities of Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Beijing. And again, without having a contractor there to work with, we partnered with the U.S. commercial service offices in those respective cities, who were really great partners to be able to work with. Between the 3 cities, we had outreach to close to 200 travel agents and tour operators as well as media. And it's fascinating to see how this China market has evolved in the last 3 years. I remember conversations 3 years ago, very little to no knowledge of Fairbanks, sometimes little to no knowledge of Alaska. And now we see not only knowledge, but results in terms of agents and operators sending their clients to our destination. And even better, Fairbanks being recognized by many, and I quote, the famous place to see the aurora. I also want to be sure to quickly reference the other core international markets that we work with. I know I spent a lot of time talking about China in my testimony here. The primary ones being Japan, German-speaking Europe, South Korea, UK, and Australia. Australia is the #1 international market still for Alaska. Predominantly, they've been summer visitors taking cruises here, but now what we're seeing with the Australian market is interest in the winter side. And again, the auroras being the driver for our friends down under to make that iconic trip to Fairbanks. We welcome them. It's a great market to work with. I don't need a Rosetta Stone for the Australian market. So that concludes my remarks for tonight. Thank you as always for your support and what you do by reinvesting bed tax dollars into destination marketing. We're putting it to good use.
Thank you. Let's take the questions. Yes.
I know this is probably, maybe it's outside your area a little bit. Do you have any updates on the proposed combined convention center / performing
No,
arts?
those conversations are kind of outside of what I work with, but I'm happy to forward that to others to have the updates sent to you. Thanks. Yeah.
Any other questions? So you're selling winter in the middle of summer to our Australian friends, is that?
That's correct. We just had, I participated in a sales mission that went there in December to New Zealand and Australia. And there's definitely that lure there. And it's interesting because what we see there is our friends across the border to Canada have more robust marketing programs, dollars than we do. And we see a lot of in their publications references to Yellowknife being the aurora capital of the world. So when I'm there, I can help to set the record straight.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda? And we have an empty seat. If there's anyone else, Ms. Olson, you're welcome. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, Jeannie Olson, 1890 Hollowell Road, North Pole. Want to speak. Last night I went to a sustainability commission meeting that they had up in North Pole, and I applaud the commission's energy and ambition. They're intending to go out to different parts of the borough, and I don't suppose that there was probably at least 12 people there, and so going out to those different areas of the borough I think really helps with the commission meetings, because I don't think that most of the time commissions have very many citizens attend. But the telling thing last night was, even though there was half a dozen topics, recycling, food security and everything, the predominant number of citizens came there to talk about air quality. And the commission was, very keen to say that, this isn't our overview mission, but they listened. And I think that my sense was there are a lot of people in the community that are very, very upset. And I don't know that the borough has the pulse of the community in this. And I also heard, and I'm glad, the mayors are going to have a meeting on the 30th out in North Pole. And I mentioned the North Pole mayor was there, and I said, I think you better get a bigger venue than City Hall, from my sense. There was a lot of people, the people that were there, just a dozen, and everybody pretty much came for that. I came for recycling, but anyway, so I just wanted to relay that I don't think anybody there, you guys weren't there, but it was a great commission. They're really eager to try and pursue other things besides recycling, and they were listening. So there you have it.
Super. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Thanks. I just wonder if you could provide a little more detail on the pulse of the community and what specifically folks are upset about or what the issues are.
Sure. One of the things was the cumbersome of the websites and trying to get any kind of information, how confusing it is. They can't find the information about what the fines are, et cetera. When they comment on Facebook, no one responds to them. Let's see, that the citizens are doing everything they can. They buy these new stoves, they do all these things, and then they're told they still can't burn. One thing I saw is that the education seems to be working, but maybe backfiring. In other words, I was impressed. A lot of people follow the monitors now. And one guy even knew my monitor, my personal Met1 link, and told me what my levels were that night. And I was impressed that they knew that. But some were upset because it was dirtier last night in Fairbanks and North Pole, and yet there was a burn ban in North Pole and not in Fairbanks. And so what was telling about that was that people are paying attention. But what they also are feeling is they're not being heard. And they're struggling. That was my sense, is that I think that having that community meeting on the 30th, this is a Tuesday night, maybe it might be good for some of the assembly members if you can come too, because it was, people were polite, but they were very, very upset. And I think, with that initiative coming down in the fall, we should be listening better.
Any other questions from Ms. Olson? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate your attending the commission meeting and giving this report. Ms. Lee, welcome. And anyone else that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda, we have an empty seat. Ms. Lee, your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Patrice Lee, 676 Hillcrest Drive, Fairbanks, 99712. And I'm here with my Citizens for Clean Air Cap-on tonight. I just wanted to mention two things that I hope that everyone, assembly-wise and throughout the borough, will be vigilant on. And that's the buildup of housing in already saturated air quality areas. In other words, where we already have bad air quality and we're contemplating putting in multiple housing units. I think that just needs to be watched very carefully, how it goes in, and making sure that at the very least, the very latest technologies are used to mitigate any further addition to the air pollution. I was driving out to North Pole the other night and just hit a wall of pollution. And I had nothing wrong with my voice or anything. Within 15 minutes, I had no voice left. I had upper respiratory problems. I've had lots of people calling me saying, wow, it's still really bad. So that leads me to the second thing that I want to talk about, and that is monitoring and relaying the data of the monitoring. Monitoring serves two purposes. It helps us evaluate where we're at. It gives us federally required information, but it also is to protect human health. So it's vitally important that all the monitoring being done in the borough be available to the community, even if it isn't the most accurate data. It's way better to tell people that the data may be slightly off, or by however much you think it might be off, and let them decide for themselves and protect their own health, than it is to say, oh, the data will confuse them, so let's not give it to them. At North Pole, one of our monitors for Citizens for Clean Air hit 600 and something. Even if you cut that in half, 300 is hazardous. So, and that's not the first time. It's still happening quite regularly. The last thing I want to mention is I'm still very disappointed, and I'd still like to see some research done about why our special purpose monitors were removed. I think it's costing quite a bit of money to keep all the smaller, what I call lesser special purpose monitors, which include the neighborhood monitors and a few other smaller ones that are at schools and other places. Now that those federal regulatory monitors are mothballed here and there, not in use in our borough, it's not as easy to tell how polluted Fairbanks is, especially in the areas where those monitors used to gather data. So I think there needs to be a review of that by borough air quality. I would hope that happens. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Before we leave, let's see if the question's for you. Mr. Roberts has a question.
Yeah, I was thinking, you mentioned the big numbers there. I don't know if anyone's mentioned, or I just haven't paid attention when they have. What kind of number would you expect on the bad burn days in summer, when we have forest fires and nobody wants to go outside? What kind of numbers do you think that is? Has anyone measured that?
Well, it is measured, and it does register on our monitors. Some monitors run year-round, and those monitors have recorded levels in the hazardous level. But you need to protect yourself then. You need to have your N95 mask, and you need to be very, very careful if you have a pre-existing condition of any kind. The bad thing is when you don't know if you have a pre-existing condition. But it doesn't go on day after day, week after week. We might have, maybe in the worst case scenario, we've had 10 days of bad air, and that's really bad. I'll grant that. But when you have a whole winter's full of air, and we know now that even levels well below the regulatory level are hazardous, that's a problem. When we say 35 micrograms per cubic meter, that's a regulatory level that was decided upon. It's not a health or protective level. It's a regulatory level. So we have some starting place for making rules and laws. We have to start somewhere. So.
Sure. I guess what I was trying to get to was an actual number, because the one time that I personally have been affected is in the summer during the burn days, and after being outside for some hours. And so I was just trying to, in my mind, create a relative index, so when you mention a number like that, I know how bad it is.
It could be anywhere from 50 to 700 or 800, and it also depends on how much of it is PM10 and PM2.5. A very, very hot fire will produce a better combustion and more larger pieces, which is more PM10, which is very assaultive on your upper respiratory tract. A slower, smoldering, wetter burn will produce that PM2.5 that may not be as assaultive right at the beginning, but it enters your bloodstream and lungs and is much more dangerous to you. So it just depends. You need a size on the particle, and you need a concentration within each cubic meter of air.
Okay,
so
thanks.
Feel free to call me or talk to me if you want to talk more about that.
Let's see if there's any other questions for Ms. Lee. Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments coming down. So it looks like we have no one else coming forward for Citizens Comment B. So we're going to close Citizens Comment B, and we're going to move on to approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. Approval of the consent agenda passes all routine items indicated by an asterisk on the agenda. The consent agenda items are not considered separately unless an assembly member so requests. In the event of such a request, the item is returned to the general agenda. Does anyone need to declare a possible conflict of interest for items on the consent agenda? Seeing no one indicating that they do, are there any other items to be removed from the consent agenda before it's read? I don't see anyone indicating so. I look for clerk, would you please read the consent agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under approval of minutes, regular assembly meeting minutes of November 9th, 2017, regular assembly meeting minutes of December 14th, 2017, communications to the assembly, memorandums from Mayor Castle recommending the appointment and or reappointment of members to the following commissions: Junior Riverfront Commission, Senior Citizens Advisory Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission. Under consideration of calendar, new business ordinances to be introduced in advance to a public hearing, we have ordinance 2018-01, an ordinance rezoning approximately 218 acres in Section 15, Township 2, South Range 2 East, Fairbanks Meridian, including lots 1 through 6 of North Star 2 Busby subdivision from light industrial, multifamily residential professional office, groundwater damage protection overlay, and waterway setback designation overlay zone to multiple family residential professional office, groundwater damage protection overlay, and a 25-foot waterway protection designation overlay zone from the meander line of Beaver Springs Creek or other appropriate zone, a portion of tract A1 North Star 2 Busby subdivision from general commercial, multifamily residential professional office, single family residential 10 outdoor recreation or groundwater damage protection overlay, and waterway setback designation overlay zone to general commercial, groundwater damage protection overlay zone, and a 25-foot waterway protection designation overlay zone from the meander line of Beaver Springs Creek or other appropriate zone, Tract A, North Star 2 subdivision, Tract C, North Star subdivision 2, and a portion of Tract B, North Star 2 subdivision from single-family residential 10 to two-family residential groundwater damage protection overlay and waterway setback designation overlay zone to two-family residential groundwater damage protection overlay and a 25-foot waterway protection designation overlay zone from the meander line of Beaver Springs Creek or other appropriate zone. A portion of Track B, North Star 2 subdivision for general commercial, multifamily residential, two-family residential, groundwater damage protection overlay, and a waterway setback designation overlay. Zone to light industrial with special limitation, groundwater damage protection overlay, and a 25-foot waterway protection designation overlay zone from the meander line of Beaver Springs Creek or other appropriate zone. And a portion of Track B, North Star 2 subdivision, and a portion of Tract A1, North Star 2 Busby subdivision from single-family residential 10 to two-family residential general commercial, light industrial groundwater damage protection overlay, and a waterway setback designation overlay zone to multifamily residential groundwater damage protection overlay, and a 25-foot waterway protection designation overlay zone from the meander line of Beaver Springs Creek or other appropriate zone. This is located southwest of the Richardson Highway and west of Busby Road, east of Alaska Railroad and Old Richardson Highway. This is rezone number 2018-03. This is sponsors Mayor Castle. Refer to the committee of the whole on January 18th, 2018, advanced to January 25th, 2018 for public hearing. Ordinance 2018-02, an ordinance providing for an election for tax cap revision to the Muskox service area. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. Refer to the Finance Committee on February 1st, 2018, advanced to February 8th, 2018 for public hearing. Ordinance 2018-03, an ordinance providing for an election for Murphy service area to assume indebtedness for the remainder of a loan from the Road Service Area Revolving Loan Fund from the Murphy service area Yellowknife differential tax zone and for a tax cap revision to the Murphy service area. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. Refer to the Finance Committee on February 1st, 2018, advanced to February 8th, 2018 for public hearing. And that concludes your consent agenda.
Thank you.
To approve the agenda and consent agenda?
Thank you. So it's been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Kecke. And before I ask for a motion to put a vote, I want to congratulate the clerk on her reading of that ordinance. He did an impressive job. So, clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Lejewski?
Yes.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Dodge?
Yes.
8-0.
Thank you. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none? It's unanimous. That takes us to messages from the Borough Mayor. Mr. Mayor, have the messages.
Thank you. A fun message this past weekend. We had the Army Air Force hockey game challenge, and I'm surprised that Ms. Major's over there smiling. The Air Force, well, the Army started out great. It was they were winning 3-2 going into the third period. It was a close game, lots of good action, lots of good skating. 3-2, it was fun. But however, the end of the game, I don't know what happened. The Air Force in the final period woke up, and Fort Wainwright unfortunately fell asleep. So the final score was 7-3, and the Air Force took that. So it was a fun game though. There is a fun meeting tomorrow. Mayor Ward might mention it in his comments too, but I wanted to mention, as we have the F-35s and additions coming into the North Pole area, a lot of building going on, we're concerned that we don't have kind of a repeat of what we saw back in the pipeline days when we had a bunch of junk built by people from the lower 48 who didn't build homes very well and very well insulated, and we're still living and trying to fix those today, 40 years later. And so there's a work session at 1 o'clock tomorrow at Cold Climate Housing Research Center to discuss housing energy efficiency and what we might be able to do to try to encourage a higher level of construction. And it helps us in so many ways to have a more improved housing market, and it helps us immensely with air quality. When you start to just figure that some homes that are built at the highest level use 10% of the energy for heating that a typical 5-star type home uses, you cut the amount of wood you're burning. You can still burn wood, but you're only using 1/10 of the wood to heat your house. It kind of doesn't make a difference what your stove is like when you're using so little fuel. So anyway, 1 o'clock at Cold Climate tomorrow for that housing energy efficiency workshop. In response to a question earlier about the Convention and Arts Center and what's going on with it, I attended the last meeting in that regard. Things are moving along slowly. There's a lot of pieces that need to come together before we would ever see any construction or design work going on. But Explore Fairbanks has released a contract for an outfit that specializes in reviewing the economic viability of those sorts of facilities. And we've done this before, but the last time we did it was a number of years ago, and the report's somewhat outdated. So Explore Fairbanks is paying to have a new report done, and it should be out shortly, with the research for it. The report's being put together as we speak. So I'll keep you posted on that, but they're looking at all of the different components from an economic perspective of what size facility we might want to have, where it pencils out, who might use it, what's the benefits to the community, what's the ripple effect through the community of having that kind of facility, et cetera. So really help us in moving forward with some good concrete information. We are keeping touch on the attitudes in the community, even though one person testified we might not. We are well aware that a lot of folks in the community are not up to speed with the complexities of the air quality regulations. It's hard to get a handle on. It's so complicated, you can't really explain everything on a soundbite on the radio. And so folks know we have an issue, but to really understand all the regulations that the Assembly's put together, you know how much time you've spent on it and the complexities there. So we're going to be hosting a number of information workshops, whatever you want to call them, in a variety of areas out in the community. And we thought we'd start in North Pole. I chatted with Mayor Ward about that, and he offered up the chambers out there for a meeting, but we decided we wanted to move to a larger venue because we're getting a number of calls and interest in that already. So we decided to move that to the library out there. So on the 30th, January 30th, and I forget, 6 o'clock, I think, is the start time for that. Anyway, at the North Pole Library. A wealth of information on exactly what the regulations entail and what we can do, the borough, as far as helping folks with different options and paths to success. We're finding, as we go forward, that there's a lot of people that mean well, but just don't have the information. We've sent out through December 31st, these are stats through the end of the year. There's been more since then, but I don't have those numbers compiled yet. But we sent out 118 letters, or we informed 118 people. That would be either a first letter or potentially a second letter that there was a violation on their property. We started contacting those people. As you know, the mayor's office is calling everyone because after getting one of those letters, people would qualify if they violated again. They could get a citation. And those that had repeated a violation and could get it were eligible before I allow a citation to be written. by our code compliance folks, we contact them from the mayor's office. So, or at least we try. We do our best to contact them. So we made 94. We contacted 94 different people. We were successful in that. Either Krista or myself are making all of these phone calls. Out of the 24 that weren't contacted, we tried, but we could either not find a phone number for them to be able to call them, and we search a number of different ways to look for that, including permanent fund files. So you would think you would have a phone number for just about everybody, but 24 folks, we either didn't have a number or the number that they had on file was not accurate. So we did try with those. Apologize for not being successful. Of the 94 that we did contact, we found that about 80% of them were very cooperative. They just didn't know. They didn't understand the rules. They weren't sure how to get alerts. They were in one way, shape, or form confused. And Krista is very good at walking them through and helping them. She stays on the phone and walks them through our website and helps them sign up for alerts or explains all the options. And I'm confident that 90 or 80% of those folks excuse me, are going to do better in the future with this after understanding the rules. There were 8 people that, only a couple that were really verbally abusive, but there were 8 just hang-ups, cut the conversation short. We don't want to talk to you. Yeah, you're from the government. You're here to help me. Yeah, sure. Goodbye. Click. And okay, that was our last contact with them. We're not going to call them again. We're not going to bug them. Unfortunately, the next contact would be a citation, and that's going to cost them money. And we didn't have the opportunity to explain that. But we're making every effort possible with these courtesy calls. We make at least 2, if not 3 messages that we leave. If someone isn't home to answer their phone, we leave messages. And after 3 tries, we give up, or depending on what the message on their message machine is, some people specify they don't want to hear from us. So then we only try twice. But anyway, we are making attempts to just inform folks that there are options out there for them. And we're doing our dangest to avoid citations. We have issued 2 so far. And I think for the number of folks that we've had to send letters to and whatnot, I'm glad to say that that's a very small percentage that we've had to write those for. And we're going to continue with these work sessions explaining the rules for folks so they understand and explaining the opportunities and what we can do to help them, because there's just so many options out there that folks aren't understanding. And we're looking at new ways to try to just generically push out information. I mean, we sent out everybody with a mailing address in the non-attainment area got at least 1 copy of our air quality booklet, which has everything in it you need to know, all the current regs, etc. Unfortunately, as somebody in the office said, a lot of people are using them for fire starters instead of reading them. And okay, that's an option. I mean, we're trying to get the information out there and doing the best that we can with it. And hopefully we'll do better, because we're clearly not being successful when 80% of the people that we've called that we had to send letters to just really honestly didn't understand the process. So we're negligent there and somehow not connecting with those people ahead of time to get where we need to go. So we'll keep working on it. That's the end of my report, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Now let's see if there are any questions. I had some. I had one. I wondered if you had tried direct messaging through Facebook on those that you can't find a phone number for.
I don't believe so.
Seems like that might be an idea.
Good idea.
Any other? Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor.
In answer to Mr. Roberts' question, I listed here. So forest fires and the levels that you would see. A number of years ago, with the worst fire we've ever had, excuse me, the levels were ranging from 200 to 1,000. However, back then, the testing equipment was not calibrated to read higher than 1,000 because we had never seen those kind of numbers, and no one else in the country had ever seen those kind of numbers. And so when it was reading 1,000, we knew it was 1,000 plus, but we didn't know how much more over the plus. So with visual scales they have for trying to estimate what it might be, we were estimating that they could have been as high as 1,400. But that wasn't continuous. It was kind of ranging between 200 and that. And fire since have never, we got new equipment, or the manufacturers made new equipment that would read higher, which we have now, but we've never seen those kind of numbers since that fire those years ago. So I would say a forest fire typically is ranging from 200 to 700, 800 is the highest we've seen since then. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do we want to try and do reports of special and standing committees? Tell you what, we'll try down. We'll start with Ms. Major and see how far we get. Any report? Nothing. Thank you, Ms. Robertson. Magic RSAC.
We had the Assembly Road Service Commission meeting Monday, and we approved the scoring matrix and guidelines for projects which they would encourage any road service areas to still turn their projects in, even though right now there is no state money for it. But they do score them. They keep track of them so that when money ever does come in, they've got things prioritized and they can immediately start doing something, getting some projects going. So that's mostly what we did, besides having a conversation on commissioner retention. And he actually pointed something out I didn't realize that I thought was good, is that we actually do really good on retention of road service commissioners. We mostly just lose them because they move, they age out, they go away. But we actually have really good retention. We just have a need for more that's out there. But we're actually doing pretty good on our regulars. Alternates we're pretty weak on. We don't have a lot of alternates. So I would like to encourage anyone who wants to help out to, if you live in a road service area, they can definitely always use the help. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
No reports.
And Mr. Tacky.
Nothing to report, but that there is an audit committee meeting next Thursday.
Mr. Wojcicki.
No report.
Mr. Gray.
No report.
And Mr. Lawrence.
No report.
And I have no report also. So with that, we're going to recess until 7 o'clock. Okay, we're going to reconvene our January 11th regular assembly meeting. It's approximately 7 o'clock, and we'll turn this up. It's approximately 7 o'clock on January 11th, and we are in the Mona Lisa Drexler Assembly Chambers, and we are going to start with a brief safety moment. Just in case we need to know where our exits are, we have an exit right there that you see the door with the little pushy thing on it behind the column, and the double doors you came through, and then another door right over there behind that column. Those will all take us out to a hallway, and then we'll go my left there and my right that way. I think it'll be all right, too. Okay, and that takes us to reports from representatives. We'll start with a report from our City of Fairbanks representative, Mr. Bagwell.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Thankful for a new year. Getting into 2018, I had to stay up till midnight to make sure 2017 left. It was pretty rough. But we're back in full swing at City Hall. City Hall has done a fantastic job of covering any absences for the holidays. I really don't have much to say, but I do want to thank this region and this community for allowing us to serve and allowing me to serve. I'm looking forward to everything that we can do together this year. That's it.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet. Any questions for Mr. Bagwell? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mayor Ward, City of North Pole. Have you anything for us this evening?
Yes, good evening. As I mentioned in some of my previous reports, we're going to start switching out our council as some of the representatives here for the Assembly to inform you on what's going on in North Pole. So this is actually my last scheduled time to come in. Someone else can't make it. So next time you'll have one of our council members here to give you an update. So definitely looking forward to that. Also, tomorrow we're working on an energy efficiency and values workshop at 1 o'clock at the Coal Climate Housing Research Center. There's some of the conversations that have come out in the growth management plan have talked about energy efficiency for new construction and some of the values that are somewhat difficult for contractors to get, and therefore less incentive to build some of the higher efficiency homes. And so we're hoping to be able to crack that nut. So if you're a realtor or an appraiser and that's something that's in your field of interest, I encourage you to come out at 1 o'clock. It's not meant to be a decision-making body, but we're hopefully going to be able to have some conversations for folks who may be able to make those decisions and help bring some clarity to the issue that we're seeing. And I can speak to that too a little bit as a contractor on some of the difficulties out there when it comes to new construction. And we definitely want to be encouraging some of that higher efficiency construction out there, and looking forward to that meeting. Also, our meeting on our next council meeting is the 16th, which is a Tuesday. We are off on Martin Luther King Day, which is a Monday. So if you are interested in our council meeting, it starts at 7 o'clock. Committee of the whole at 6:30 in our chambers on Tuesday the 16th. And we also just started streaming or trying to stream our council meetings on Periscope, trying to take it into some of the social media avenues out there. So if you're interested, you can go to our Facebook page, and we're, like I said, we're trying to play around with this. Right? The last one didn't have really good video quality because it was an iPhone, but we're working on it. If you are interested, we do stream our meetings live on our website, so there's a link on there to the clerk's office. And also, the first meeting that we had in January, we awarded the contract to exclusive paving for the water system expansion phase 1 through 4. And we're definitely excited. There's been lots of meetings over the last few weeks here on that project. It's a very big project, and we're excited to get the contractor on board. We've got a lot of work to do, and they're going to be starting in early spring on phase 1 and 2, and then next year will be phase 3 and 4. That's all I have.
Super, thank you. Any questions from Mayor Ward? Thank you very much. Good luck with the water project. And Mr. Bagwell, I'm sorry, Mr. Bartel.
Thank you, President Dodge. Excuse me. I appreciate the opportunity to present before the Assembly, and I just have a few announcements to make here. Of course, Tuesday was the first day of school, return to school after the winter break, so we have school is back full in session, and want to make sure that everybody's watchful, keeps a watchful eye for all the students catching buses and returning home. The school board, I'm going to read some announcements here. The school board at the last regular meeting proclaimed through resolution the week of January 15th in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and will conduct activities throughout the district in his honor. School's administrative center will be closed Monday the 15th in observance of the holiday. The administration will also be hosting a community event next Thursday, the 18th, which will provide an opportunity for parents and our community stakeholders to learn more about the district's comprehensive review of district-wide career technical education programs. The event is open to the public and will be run from 5:30 to 7 at Ryan Middle School. With the legislative session scheduled to begin shortly, and I see Representative Wilson in the audience, the Legislative Committee and the administration have been working on the legislative priorities. The proposed priorities will be before the board for consideration of approval on January 16th, which is next Tuesday's regular meeting. And the administration is working on the proposed 2018-19 budget and expects to present it to the board on the February 6th regular board meeting, and we look forward to working with the borough throughout the budget process. Again, our next regular scheduled school district meeting will be Tuesday, January 16th at 7 p.m. And that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you very much. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Yes, this one's just discussion is back. I had a question for you. What was the date of the CTE?
Career Technical Education? It is next Thursday, the 18th, Ryan Middle School at 5:30.
Super, thank you. Well, looks like that was a complete report. No questions. Thank you very much for joining us and for that report. So that takes us to special orders. We'll start with ordinance number 2017-20-1Q, an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget by appropriating $120,654.90 of funds received from the State of Alaska Department of Public Safety to the Capital Projects Fund for Project Management and purchase of 4 911 workstations, and approving an intergovernmental agreement with State of Alaska. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. It's on page 63 of your packet. Mayor Castle, do you have a staff report?
We do. And for that, we'll go to our Director of Emergency Operations, Mr. David Gibbs.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. The Alaska State Troopers Fairbanks Dispatch Center serves as the backup answering point for 911 calls. As you're aware, we have the borough contracts with the city to serve as the primary point at which 911 calls are answered. In exchange for serving this backup role, the borough provides the troopers with 2 911 workstations. Recently, the state troopers chartered a project to expand and modernize their dispatch center. They're going to increase the number of 911 workstations from 4 to 6. So all of the positions in the center will be upgraded from 4 to 6. Just as a matter of interest, the troopers are also going to be adding computer to dispatch, which is independent of this contract, and upgrading radio consoles at the same time. So it's a very major project. The value of that project is about $650,000. So this ordinance accomplishes a couple things. It appropriates the funding that we expect to receive from the state for their share of the project, and it approves the intergovernmental agreement that allows us to accept that funding. The borough and the troopers have agreed to a cost share, and it's going to be approximately 86% carried by the state, and the remaining 14% will be carried by the borough. With that, that concludes my staff report. Just as a matter of interest, the total value of the 911 part of this project is about $140,000. So with that, that concludes my staff.
Thank you. So we're going to open public hearing on ordinance 2017-20-1Q, and this is the ordinance amending the budget by appropriating $120,654.90 to the purchase of 4 911 workstations, essentially. I have no one signed up. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on ordinance 2017-20-1Q? I'm not seeing anybody coming forward, so we close public hearing. Look for a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Lawrence and I think seconded by Mr. Gray. Assembly debate, questions of staff? Discussion? I don't see any. So clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Lajewski?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Dodge?
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
8-0.
It's adopted 8-0.
Move for immediate reconsideration.
Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Cooper to immediately reconsider the approval of this ordinance. Clerk, please call the roll on immediate reconsideration. Any discussion, debate?
Mr. Roberts?
No.
Mr. Tackey?
No.
Mr. Gray?
No.
Ms. Major?
No.
Mr. Lajewski?
No.
Mr. Cooper?
No.
Mr. Lawrence?
No.
Ms. Dodge?
No. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
0-8.
The immediate reconsideration fails 0-8. And I'm going to take just a minute. It looks like we just run through the stuff like we don't really care about the details. What we want you to know is we've had this in front of us last week. We had a fairly in-depth work session on many of these things. So we've been briefed on them and asked questions and had discussions. So we aren't just saying, oh, sure, whatever. There's been some thoughtful discussion beforehand. So that moves us to Ordinance 2017-20-1R, an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget by appropriating $66,130 from the general fund balance to the multi-year general subfund for the Library Catalog Consortium Migration Project and approving a membership agreement with the Alaska Library Network. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. It's on page 72 of our packet. Mayor Castle, do you have a staff report?
We do. We'll go to our library director, Melissa Harder.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm going to defer to Renee here, who's going to give you the presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
So, before you is an appropriation for funding the Fairbanks North Scarborough Library Catalog Migration and improving membership agreement with Alaska Library Network. The reason the Fairbanks North Scarborough Public Libraries were invited to join the Alaska Library Consortium. Currently, most of the libraries in the state are already part of the Catalog Consortium, except UAF, Fairbanks North Scarborough, and Ketchikan. The University of Alaska Fairbanks is moving to the consortium here in January. Fairbanks North Scarborough currently is in a consortium with UAF for CRC Dynex Integrated Library System Services, and that contract ends June 30th, 2018. If Fairbanks North Scarborough does not move with UAF, we will have to negotiate a new contract with CRC Dynex for the Integrated Library System, and will not have the negotiating power that on our own. And we have received a quote, which is not real favorable. So the Alaska Library Catalog is a shared catalog where public libraries, some school libraries under the Mat-Su Borough, some special libraries down in Juneau and other parts of the state, and university libraries all have their titles and items available for users to look at. And they share that catalog and those items together. So a user could go in and say, I want to learn something about NASA, and they can pull from UAF library, or UAA right now library, for example. The Alaska Library Consortium was started in 1999 and started with 12 libraries. In 2005, those 12 libraries switched to CRC Dynex as an integrated library system because it's a very robust integrated library system. And it's also the integrated library system that the borough is currently using, our public libraries are using. So it'll be a fairly easy migration from, we're staying within the same integrated library system, one to the other. Now, as of 2016, there's 77 libraries in the consortium, and if UAF and Fairbanks North Scarborough move into it, that'll be 78, 79 libraries. So some of the paying partners in the consortium you can see on this slide are Anchorage Museum, there's the Alaska State Libraries down in Juneau, there's Anchorage Public Libraries, Juneau Public Libraries, Mat-Su Borough Libraries, Sitka Libraries, and UAA Libraries. Those are current. So why should we change? One of the biggest reasons is a reduction in cost for the integrated library services, an increased negotiating power for the integrated library services. When you have that many libraries working out there, you can negotiate the cost down a lot better. And then in addition, you're sharing those costs across all those libraries instead of one library carrying the full burden of the cost for the system. Another big benefit is for the users, to reiterate again, from the user side, instead of having, just the items that are available to them at the Fairbanks North Scarborough libraries, they'll have resources from across the state. Another large benefit is having the system administration and server maintenance move off-site, which removes work from computer services and shares those costs also across multiple libraries. And we have Tier 1 help desk support 24/7 out of Anchorage. The estimated savings over the next 4 years could be anywhere from $223,000, and then we've got some adjusted numbers where maybe some of those costs the mailing cost could be a little higher, so it might be $191,000 in the savings, still in that $200,000 range that we estimate the savings to be. And so even the $66,130 that we're asking the Assembly to appropriate is actually being subsidized by another $30,000. We'll miss that cost as if we don't go now. Rasmussen Foundation has been working with the Alaska Library Network to help fund getting libraries into the consortium. So they're putting up $30,000 with that 66, so it's actually costing $96,000 for that migration. And that's what we're asking for appropriation. And then the next time the borough would have to pay any of the shared costs for the integrated library system will not be again until 2019-2020 budget. So the very next fiscal year, we only have to worry about the actual additional costs of mailing items to other libraries and receiving them back. So, and then Again, reiterating the benefit to the library's users is the expanded reach and a collection of 350,000 items. With the borough now, users could have up to 6.6 million items that they could draw from for their research or projects and things they're working on. And that ends my presentation. Any questions?
Okay, well, that takes us to, Mayor Presuming, thank you. That'll take us to public hearing. So I'm going to open public hearing on ordinance 2017-20-1R, and this is an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget by appropriating $66,130 from the general fund for the Library Catalog Consortium Migration Project and also approving a membership agreement with the Alaska Library Network. I have no one signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this ordinance? I don't see anybody coming forward, so I'm going to close public hearing. Look for a motion.
Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Cooper, seconded by Mr. Lawrence. Any discussion, debate on this? Yes, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys making the effort to deal with the situation proactively and find some savings while doing it. I guess I just want to put a bug in the mayor's ear that because this doesn't, migration doesn't line up nicely with the budget process, we're kind of prepaying to make the change now and considering putting some of the savings back into the general fund balance to bring that back up once we get to next year's budget. So, thank you.
Good observation. Any other? Yes, Mr. Tacky.
I just had a question of, are there any negatives or drawbacks? I mean, everything sounds great. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
There will be an impact on staffing in that transition period because we will have to make some changes with staffing and how we handle things in that initial migration. But we're working as a team. We all agreed that we're going to back each other up and we'll shift people around and help each other as much as we can to get through because this is a fairly tight migration time. If we start tomorrow, which they want to start tomorrow, they want to try to transition by May, a date in May. So it's a quick turnaround. So there will be an impact on staff, but we're working it together.
I don't consider that so much a negative, though. It's an interesting project, and it's going to increase opportunity for the people of Fairbanks greatly, access to materials and things like that. So I think it's pretty cool.
Thanks,
Mr. Roberts.
So I was curious. You had a slide showing paying members. Are there non-paying members of the consortium?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, clerk, I think we're ready to call up to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Mr. Tacky.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
8-0.
It is adopted 8-0.
Move for immediate reconsideration. Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Cooper and seconded by Mr. Tacky to move for immediate reconsideration. And that's a motion that we do so that they can actually execute on this tomorrow. So it becomes code as soon as we vote on this immediate reconsideration, assuming we fail it. So clerk, please call the roll on immediate reconsideration.
Thank you, Mr. Wojcicki.
No.
Ms. Major.
No.
Mr. Roberts.
No.
Mr. Gray.
No.
Mr. Tacky.
No.
Mr. Cooper.
No.
Mr. Lawrence.
No.
Ms. Dodge.
No. Would anyone like to change the vote? Seeing none?
0-8.
Immediate reconsideration fails 0-8. Good luck on the migration. Thank you for bringing that forward. So that takes us to Ordinance 2017-62, and that is an ordinance changing the name of the Hopeless Service Area to the Olympic Service Area. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. It's on page 84. Mayor Castle, do you have a report?
We do. We have a hopeful report on the hopeless service area from Michael Bradley from Rural Services.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't have a very long staff report here. It really boils down to the commission not feeling that the name Hopeless sheds a positive light on their neighborhood. So they had a public meeting, and voted to change their name to Olympic Service Area, which is one of the larger subdivisions in that service area with roads named like Homer and Plato and Athena. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open public hearing on Ordinance 2017-62, the ordinance changing the name from Hopeless Service Area to Olympic Service Area. Again, I have no one signed up, and I see no one coming forward. So I'm going to close public hearing. Look for a motion.
Move to adopt.
Thank you. Moved by unanimous, seconded by Tacky. Mr. Gray, we'll give it to you. And assembly debate discussion. Yes, Mr.
Bradley, where is what is now the Hopeless Road Service Area? Where is that? What area?
It's off of Badger Road, on the backside there on the east side of Badger.
All right, thank you.
No other questions or comments, debate? Seeing none, clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Tacky.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
8-0.
It is transformed 8-0. So that takes us to Ordinance 2017-20-1N, and this is an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget by appropriating $29,266 from Chris Kringle Service Area Fund Balance to the Capital Projects Fund for the required match for FMAT's Improvement Program Service Upgrades Project. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. It's on page 89 of your packet. Mayor Castle, do you have a staff report?
We do. Back to Michael Bradley.
So Chris Kringle Service Area was, their project was selected by FMATS, which is also known as the Fairbanks Metropolitan Area Transportation System. So under their 2018 FMATS Improvement Program Surface Upgrade Project, Chris Kringle is going to be part of that, which will replace their current asphalt surface with a new asphalt surface. So their existing surface has been around for 30 years and it's ready for replacement. So this appropriation would fund the 9.03% match for this project, as well as it includes a 15% contingency. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you very much. So we're going to open public hearing again, Ordinance 2017-20-1N, and this is appropriating $29,266 from Chris Kringle Service Area Fund to capital projects. I don't have anyone signed up again. I don't see anyone coming forward, so I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing.
Move to adopt. Second.
So this has been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Gray. And any assembly debate discussion? Seeing none, clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Tacky.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none, it's adopted 8-0. And that takes us to Ordinance 2017-69, an ordinance amending Chapter 8.20 and 8.24, Fairbanks North Star Borough Code regarding the foreclosure process. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. It's on page 95 of our packet. Mayor Castle, do you have a staff report?
We do. We'll go to our Treasury Budget Manager, Peggy McDonald.
So what this ordinance does, it brings our code
in sync with what the state statute says and what currently Treasury budget is doing. So in Section 2, we are just, you can't publish something on the same day that we're listing the petition and judgment, so we're just cleaning up some verbiage there to say within 7 calendar days of the list that we will do the publication. And also further down, Treasury budget staff is who does the, sends out the certified mail, not the clerk's office, so we're just removing the clerk and just leaving it the borough will. Later on in Section 3, we're removing the judgment and decree of foreclosure and sale and just saying the deed from when we take tax deed. They have a 2-year period. Further on to Section 4, currently it says that the borough has a 1-year redemption period. Our redemption period is currently longer. It's more like a year and a half to almost 2 years. So we're just cleaning that up to say at least a period of 1 year for the redemption period. And then we're removing a section from line 76 to 81, and you did receive an email today from Jill Dolan on that. If you have further questions, we can answer that. And then the redemption period at the end, instead of just not more than 45 days or less than 30, we're stating it says at least 30 days before the expiration of the redemption period. And just clarifying when we are publishing, and then we're adding the language that's in state statute on who we have to notify. And if you have any further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Dolan, do you wish to add anything to the staff report?
I just wanted to follow up on a question that was at the work session about whether or not a mortgage or a lien holder can partially redeem a parcel. And we can't find any support for that in state law. In fact, it conflicts with a couple parts of the foreclosure process in state law. So I did talk to the borough assessor about Mr. Roberts' concerns about mobile homes. It wouldn't impact anyone in a mobile home park. It's just not how we send our assessment notices and how the foreclosure process works there. So I don't think there's any negative implications with it, and I think this does bring us into compliance with state law.
Thank you. So, presume that concludes staff report?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and open public hearing on ordinance 2017-68, and this is an ordinance amending chapters 8.20 and 8.24 regarding the foreclosure process. Again, I have no one signed up, but I have someone coming forward. Ms. Davis, welcome. Your name and address for the record, please.
I've been missing for a while.
You have been.
Charlotte Davis, 5820 Gene Hot Springs Road. I think this is just pretty much like she said, just kind of cleaning up stuff, except for starting on line 92. I don't understand why lien holders on record for the property if it's more than $10,000. So I'd like that to be fleshed out a little bit as to, or maybe you could ask staff after public comment to comment on that. Because I think some people who might have an interest that's less than $10,000 should also be notified if they're a lien holder. But other than that, I'm fine with the ordinance the way it stands.
Thank you. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Yes, Mr. Roberts.
Did you realize that the $10,000 refers to the assessed value of the property, not to the value of the lien?
It doesn't make any difference to me whether it's assessed value or not.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Davis? Yes, Mr. Gr- Oh, okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down. Anyone else wishing to speak on this ordinance? I'm not seeing anyone coming forward, so I'm going to close public hearing.
Move to adopt. Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Frankie. Mr. Lawrence.
Well, I have the same question as Ms. Davis. I assume lines 91 through 94 is what state law provides, but Ms. Dolan, do you know why this notice provision is not applicable to properties assessed for less than $10,000?
This does mirror state law, so I don't know the reason why the legislature determined that, but that's what it was.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion or debate? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Just a possibility for the threshold at $10,000 is that at that level the taxes would be $140, and so below that it would cost you more to deal with it. So it's kind of a de minimis tax level below that. Maybe that's why I'm just throwing that out as an option.
Any other? Yes, Mr. Wojcicki.
Well, since the question's been raised, I'm just kind of wondering to myself how many properties are assessed below 10,000. The only ones I can think of would be black spruce, undeveloped properties. I don't know. It just seems like it's not many that it applies to.
And currently, so we do send, when we get the litigation report, we send notice to everybody that we need to send notice to. I don't think currently we look at what the assessed value is, so if it's a $5,000 piece of property, we will notice everybody that we have on the litigation report.
So you're going above and beyond,
yes, we're going above
the
and beyond what the
state
state
law
law says.
Anything else? Nope. Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Ms. Major. Yes. Ms. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Tackey.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none, 8-0. It's approved 8-0. So that takes us to ordinance 2017-20-10. I think it's 10, an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget by appropriating $15,878 in federal pass-through grant funds and $11,417 in local matching funds from the general fund fund balance to the special revenue fund to conduct a historic building inventory in the Salta North Pole area, Phase 2, to update the historic preservation plan, an element of the comprehensive plan. Sponsors Mayor Castle. It's on page 100 of your packet. There is a proposed substitute, presumably in your yellow packet. Mayor Castle, do you have a staff report?
We do. So the proposed substitute is to kind of clean up the confusion we had from last week when we were talking about this, because we are in fact using staff time as the match. However, we needed to adjust the language to kind of reflect how we get there in using cash first and then kind of backcharging the labor to that cash. Anyway, we'll explain that a little bit more, but that's the purpose of the substitute that is in your yellow folder. And for the report, Melissa Kellner from Community Planning.
Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance accepts and appropriates grant funds to conduct a historic building survey in the North Pole Salcha area. There's never been a survey done in this area. There are 2 historic preservation commissioners here in support of the ordinance tonight. As the mayor was just describing, the match is from community planning staff hours, the hours that are already paid for out of our regular budget, and volunteer historic preservation commissioner hours. The substitute language clarifies that these hours are already in the budget, and this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open public hearing on ordinance 2017-20-10, an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget. I don't have anyone signed up. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the 2017-20-10? I see no one coming forward. So I'm going to close public hearing. Look for a motion.
Move to adopt. Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Gray. Discussion debate. Yes, Mr. Roberts.
So I have a question, though probably of finance. Looking at this and the way this is constructed and with the substitute, does this mean that we're first going to increase that line contribution from general fund? We're actually going to have to officially do that and transfer the money on paper. And then as we expend the labor and community planning, we'll then have to modify that back with the budget, and basically we'll end up lapsing this money at the end of year lapse when we do actuals. Does that sound right?
I think that's a fair way to explain it. So essentially, because the project potentially crosses fiscal years and because it's a grant, they want to set up the fund, which is the cash from the general fund into this special fund, and then charge it back. And so in order to alleviate the Assembly's concern that essentially it was an additional appropriation, the language in the substitute will credit it basically back into the general fund as the dollars are matched.
Thanks.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Cooper.
I'd like to move the substitute.
Good point. Thank you. So Mr. Cooper's moved the substitute, and Mr. Tackey seconded it. So on the substitute. Any other discussion on the substitute? Seeing none. Look, yes, Mr. Lawrence.
I'm certainly going to voice support for this ordinance. I think history, I think, structures of historical significance in this community have been oftentimes lost because of the full significance were not appreciated. And I know in this case, there's never been any kind of inventory taken in the Salt Shed North Pole area. So I'm glad to see we're rectifying that.
The results will be interesting. Any other questions or comments? Discussion debate. Seeing none. Clerk, I think we're ready to vote, and the substitute will carry the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Tackey.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none.
8-0.
It's adopted 8-0. And that takes us to, we're now at ordinance number 2017-71, an ordinance amending Fairbanks North Star Borough Code Title 20 regarding direct sale of borough land. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. Mayor Castle, do you have a staff report?
Absolutely. We have our land manager here, Sandra Moda, for that report.
Good
evening.
The Fairbanks North Star Borough owns roughly 80,000 acres of land that was granted by the state of Alaska specifically for the purpose of generating income for the borough. That was the legislative intent of the grant, and the Assembly expressed that intent in Resolution 88060, which I read last week at the work session. Basically says the land is intended to generate revenue short-term, long-term by leases, sales, and adding that land to the tax roll. Sales generated in-house by subdivisions in the last 44 years have averaged 380 acres a year. So of the 97,000 acres received to date by patent, we have only sold 17,000 acres in the last 44 years. Borough land is generally not road accessible, and given the constraints of Title 17 as well as the limitations that are placed on us in Title 20 for subdivision of the larger tracts into sellable lots, it's more and more difficult to sell borough land. It's more and more expensive for the borough to sell borough land. We recognize that we're at a disadvantage when we subdivide in-house. We pay higher wages in the private sector to build roads when Title 17 requires that we build those roads. We are procedurally more restricted in the public process. We are essentially held to a higher standard when we do subdivisions in-house. So it is more cost-effective for the private sector to subdivide than it is for the borough to subdivide. And so with that in mind, Land Management began working with the Land Management Advisory Commission. I show records that our first discussion was on July 13th, 2016. Mr. Satley was the Assembly representative on the LMAC at the time, and Pat Carlson was the director. So we, since that introduction, we discussed it again November 23rd, 2016. We discussed it again March 15th, 2017, and the LMAC unanimously approved the ordinance, the proposal on April 19th, 2017. Since that approval, there, I believe, were two additional meetings where we discussed status. There wasn't much. We hadn't had an opportunity to present to the Assembly yet. So I would remind that every one of those Land Management Advisory Commission meetings is a public process, a public meeting with an agenda published for public notice. The practice, the broadening of this direct sale section of code that we're proposing is consistent with the practices of other second-class boroughs. I referenced last week Kenai, Aleutians East, Ketchikan, who offers their land to a local real estate agent for sale, like any other piece of property. The ordinance, if adopted, broadens our ability to conduct direct land sales without eliminating Assembly oversight or public process. Each sale would still be its own ordinance, resulting in 4 public meetings, 3 of which have opportunity for public testimony. 3 of those meetings associated with the direct sale ordinance itself, and then possibly an additional meeting for the subdivision required to create that lot, which is planning board, a public meeting again. Possibly even additional public meetings if the Assembly were to make the sale contingent on a rezone. The ordinance, as proposed, does not grant the administration the ability to conduct a sale without Assembly approval or public process. The Assembly reserves case by case the ability to reject the sale and, for public benefit concerns, to perhaps instruct the administration to pursue a public auction sale of that property. So just briefly to address some of the concerns that we've seen in testimony so far, if a specific area of borough land is of concern, then I would just like to stress that that specific area represents 4,000 of the 80,000 acres that this ordinance proposes to address. And that any issue in that particular area of borough land would be its own ordinance brought before the Assembly to be deliberated. As proposed, the ordinance would allow for those with an interest in borough land to protect their investment by having an opportunity to buy it directly from the borough. It would also protect those with an interest in land adjacent to borough land to protect their investment by buying the land next door. And it would possibly assist neighboring developments by making their developments cheaper if they're able to purchase borough land, which we can't subdivide because we don't have access from the road, and they may have. It allows them to incorporate that land into their development, and the costs of their development are then spread out over larger amount of sales for land. So bringing down the cost of those roads and utilities. It's a way to allow the borough to offer land for sale without incurring the expense of subdivision and sale process. The subdivision process becomes the responsibility of the buyer and not the borough. And it helps us put it on the tax roll, which is where it's most beneficial to the residents of the borough. And I would close my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
Yes, I'd like to disclose that I missed last week's work session, or I would have brought it up then, but the reference was made to a particular piece of property that in which there's been some testimony. I recall there was some testimony previously. I have represented a business that operates an Aurora viewing center on borough leased land. I believe that may be what you were referring to, Sandra, or maybe not.
One of those cases was a heavily property.
So I'm disclosing that, but I don't feel I have any kind of conflict, because this is an ordinance in general nature. It's just having to do with approval of the process. If and when that past client comes before us to seek to purchase, I will definitely have a conflict at that point, and I will advise the Assembly. But I don't think I have a conflict at this point.
Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Lawrence.
It seems a reasonable opinion to me. Any okay. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I think that I'll find that you don't have a conflict of interest on this because it is general in nature and it is a process as opposed to a specific property. So a brief aside there. We're going to now move to public hearing, and we have 9 people signed up. We'll start with those 9, and if there are people that want to speak up to the issue after we've gone through this list, there'll be an empty seat, and you're welcome to come down and take it. So I'll start by calling Mr. Kurt Freeman and Mr. Milt Bear. Please take a seat. Give us your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kurt Freeman. My address 130 Goldstream Road, Fairbanks. I urge you to vote no on this proposed ordinance and present the following comments as support of my position. Excuse me. The proposed ordinance, as I see it, will lead to an inevitable situation where conflicts are going to arise between 2 parties with adjacent but incompatible goals for the interest they hold on borough lands. The ordinance does not address whether the senior interest holder would maintain a superior right if overlapped by a junior interest holder extending that 40-acre extension. This situation leads to legal disputes where nobody's going to win, including the borough. And these conflicts have arisen in the past. This is not a hypothetical. This happened in both the Esther Dome area and the Tungsten Hill subdivision, where mineral lands were with high potential, past mining had taken place, and yet they were disposed in residential lands were disposed. Those disposals create stranded assets that'll never create the high-paying jobs that we know mines in this area have and are creating right now as we speak. That also will cut out your substantial state and borough taxes, which those same mines create. Some years ago, the borough through Chapter 18 designated certain areas within the borough as being high mineral potential lands, whose first and priority use was mineral development. This proposed ordinance does not acknowledge that Chapter 18, and those conditional uses that are allowed within the Chapter 18 designation are quite limited. So if passed, the proposed ordinance will create a new procedure that I believe will be in conflict with that title, and again, setting up the near certain likelihood of legal disputes that nobody wins. And my final comment as written, the proposed ordinance would create the ability for nuisance parcels to be created, the express design of which would be to inhibit or prevent legitimate business or residential uses within the borough. As both a private landowner in the borough for over 30 years and a private small business owner in the borough for over 30 years, I'm adamantly opposed to such obstructionism being given the legal standing that the proposed ordinance affords. So in conclusion, I would ask you to vote no on ordinance 2017-71. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Freeman, the borough currently has a process in which it can sell its land. Mm-hmm. Do you think the current process gives adequate protection to owners of mineral rights?
Yes, I think that would be. We already have a process that does work. I see no reason to create a backdoor method of doing the same.
Can you cite the language in this ordinance? The changes being made that concerns you.
The concern here is that let's say I own a mining claim on borough land. I have a non-fee simple interest. It is very conceivable, in fact, it's almost guaranteed that if borough land is now for sale adjacent to it, that land will be bid on. Some of the best land in the borough is also best mineral land. So now I have a conflict. I have a cloud on my title. I have somebody nearby who does not have the same interest that I might have as a mining claim owner, say a residential or a business purpose. That kind of cloud on title sends investment somewhere else, anywhere else but here. I've seen it happen. So that's my real concern. But the process that we have is adequate in protecting those rights.
That being under Title 18.
Correct.
But this ordinance would also allow the owner of the mineral rights to buy the land.
I'm aware of that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. I was curious when you spoke about creating nuisance parcels, what you meant by that.
There are people who don't like what I do for a living, and their ability to essentially acquire a piece of borough land to be adjacent to a mining property or a mining venture creates a whole level of legal hassle that I just don't want to have to face. I don't see any reason for it.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, Mr. Rajewski.
So are you suggesting that perhaps folks with a political bend of anti-mining may intentionally build houses on top of where a potential mine could be, sort of thing, to prevent it from happening?
Maybe not houses, but essentially, yes, that they would create a nuisance effect that would prevent me from moving forward.
I'm curious, did that happen in some of the other cases that you were referring to?
Yeah, yes, it did.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm confused here. You said this has happened previously, and you don't want it to happen again, but it happened under the old rules of land sale. We can still sell land adjacent to mineral property under the old rules. What is in this that takes away any rights from or changes it? I'm not understanding why that's different. We can do it already.
I guess the point is that the system that already exists is supposed to protect us from those kind of issues. Tungsten Hill in particular and Esther Dome, it did not. But that wasn't because there wasn't a public process. There were people here, I was one of them, who spoke out against that, and it was ignored. I don't think this has any better ability to ignore the public than the current system. I see the system as being perfect, but I don't see any reason to add more ordinance to an already existing issue. I think it works the way it is.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
So would you say that part of the problem would be that this restricts the number of bidders to a very small amount, 1 or 2 or just single-digit number of bidders because of having that interest in the property, whereas the public borough process would have anybody who wants bidding on the land? thereby allowing more competition, making it harder for some individual with an agenda to be able to be sure that they could get that piece of property and thereby hamper the development.
It would be easier. Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down. I have, if Mr. Rich Hughes would take the empty seat. Mr. Bear, your name and address for the record, please. 3 minutes.
Well, good evening. My name is Mel Bear, and my address is P.O. Box 71938, Fairbanks, Alaska 99707. I'm a member of the LMAC committee and would like to see this ordinance referred back to the LMAC committee for further discussion. I voted to recommend this ordinance to the Borough Assembly and think if we can improve on it, we should do so. In light of new suggestions, I think the LMAC committee should take another look at the ordinance and see if we can improve the ordinance. The LMAC committee meets January 17th, and I don't think a couple weeks delay would hurt the ordinance. This is the time to address changes if needed. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Bear, do you have any specific ideas at this point about what changes might be reasonable or be a good idea?
I don't have any, but I think we should look at them because in our discussions when we started, as I recall, and I haven't been on the LMAC committee for all of these discussions. I was just appointed, I believe, this year, earlier in the year, or in 2017, sometime during the year. But no, I think we should listen and see if there's something better. Then we're going to have a lot of conflict down the road and whatnot. Now's the time to address it. And I guess that's what I'm saying is, can we take another look at it and see if there is anything major that we need to change or minor?
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Bear? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Bear. We appreciate your service and you coming down. So I have Mr. Clark Milne next, and Mr. Hughes. Your name and address for the record, please. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Richard Hughes. I reside at 318 Juneau Avenue in Fairbanks. My interest in this ordinance is from the standpoint of a mining engineering consultant with project interest in the area and the borough. I support the testimony provided by Mr. Freeman and Mr. Bear. The proposed wording is unacceptable as it reads. In part, 20.20.090, direct sale. A, period. The assembly may, by ordinance, authorize the mayor to sell borough land directly to those holding a land interest in borough land or land adjoining the borough land if there is no public use for the land. I recommend a modification that would remove the three words in line 72, which are in borough land, to read 20.20.090, direct sale. A, the assembly may, by ordinance, authorize the mayor to sell borough land directly to those holding a land interest in land adjoining the borough land if there is no public use for the land. Alternatively, I recommend that the proposed ordinance be returned to the Land Management Advisory Committee for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Let's see if there are some questions for you. Yes, Mr. Tackey and Mr. Lawrence.
So you're suggesting to remove the fact that an individual that has interest in the direct plat can't bid on it?
That's correct.
And why is that?
To prevent the issues that Mr. Freeman highlighted very adeptly, where an individual can be, well, it relates to the specific issue going on in the Treasure Creek area at the present time, as a matter of fact. And a lease is provided there for aurora viewing and dog sledding, which would directly conflict with the development of a major mining enterprise.
Is in that major mining enterprise has an adjoining lot, right?
Correct.
So they have the ability to bid on the same plot?
Correct.
Mr. Lawrence, you're next.
I thought, Mr. Hughes, what you were saying is that, so what the people you don't want a right to buy the borough land or those holding a land interest in that land, you don't mind if neighbors, if an individual with an interest in adjoining property were granted the right to bid on that land.
Right.
Okay, so how is that? I mean, we're not dealing with a specific issue now. I mean, what you brought up, isn't it true that all that has to be done is the mining community come to the assembly and explain to them what impact the sale of the property would be? And so I'm not clear on why you're saying that adjoining property, people with interest in adjoining property should be allowed to bid on property, but not a person or entity that has an interest in the property itself. Is that,
sorry.
Yeah, can you explain?
The issue is that a person holding a lease interest with the surface rights could prevail in purchase of a land in that particular area and really upset the development of a major mining project. And this is our concern, or my concern.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
So would you say that that your amendment would rectify the situation because it would take out the possibility of somebody getting a lease on some piece of borough land anywhere in the borough and then suddenly being able to use that lease to get into the purchase when, to begin with, they had no actual interest there? Right. And thereby, those people with an agenda could use that as a tactic to stop the development they wish to stop.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Hughes? Yes, Mr. Majewski.
Let's see here. You also sent an email to the assembly.
No, I did not.
You didn't?
I did not, no.
Oh, it's the next speaker. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you did.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming down and speaking with us. We appreciate it. In the empty seat, I have Stan Stenberg. I mess up your name. I understand. Mr. Milne, your name and address for the record, please.
Hi.
Have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Clark Milne. I live at 1119 Coppet Street in Fairbanks.
Please be aware I'm the current chair of the Land Management Advisory Commission, the LMAC, and also an active member of the local branch of Alaska Miners Association, AMA, but I mustn't speak officially for either of those. I'm not authorized to speak for them at this time. I'm solely speaking for myself with that background and knowledge. It appears, and I did send the message, so this is largely to come from what you're mentioning, Mr. Wojcicki. It appears to me the language of the proposed direct sale ordinance, 2017-71, which is up for passage at this meeting, has gone a bit too far in expanding the ability of the borough to sell borough land without sufficient public process. We at the LMAC did spend a part of the fall 2017, and as Sandra mentioned, several other previous meetings anticipating, trying to go to that, reviewing and discussing this ordinance, and we all, my memory is it was unanimous, recommended approval of its passage. But subsequent review has made me recognize that there's at least one questionable process or result that seems to invite misuse, namely being able to lease a chunk of borough land, 40 acres or less, and then turn to Land Management Division to then buy that chunk, a portion of that chunk, or some adjoining borough-owned land without much scrutiny. The purchase property would not be cheap because you have to do all the actions that are required to make it a valid property, surveying, replanting, but the new process of an individual property selection would offer dramatically more freedom in carving out an attractive property, a remote property, sometimes to the public's disbenefit. Therefore, I request that the Assembly tonight either amend the ordinance language per a brief suggestion below that Mr. Hughes identified, or else postpone passage of the ordinance to allow LMAC and the Borough Administration the chance to discuss its features and ramifications more thoroughly than we did in November to see if amendments are called for. The alteration proposed would intercept the lease then purchase process that I mentioned above, which would remove those three words that Mr. Hughes mentioned, pull, after land interest in, pull, borough land or. This change would properly enable the purchase of borough lands to improve a neighboring owner's circumstances by allowing them to acquire adjoining borough property. Namely, it would be a positive result for the ordinance, but it wouldn't facilitate this kind of nefarious lease then buy process, which would arbitrarily cherry picks odd parcels out of the midst of broad borough land areas. Given that there's no pressing reason to pass this ordinance without some time for additional public review, that seems a workable path too. Having it go back and chat at the LMAC and get some public testimony at that meeting. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Good timing, Mr. Mellon. Yes, Mr. Tacky has the first question for you.
I guess this would be kind of like for a lawyer and also like the hypothetical regarding that amendment noted. So if, let's say you have two mining operations and one's next door to the other.
Yes.
And the individual that actually has the mineral interest in the borough land spot now can't bid on it because he has the direct interest in it. And so the competing mining company next door could then bid on it and take the property.
I'm not sure if I understood your hypothetical. If they were both adjoining, then they would have to have a sealed bid. If one was adjoining and one wasn't, then it wouldn't have standing. But that's true even if you were to pass the ordinance as it stands. You have to be adjoining.
I'm saying if the mineral interest was in the specific
inside the borough property?
And that's, yeah.
Then if there were two of them, they would have the sealed bid possibility because that language hasn't changed.
But you just took off they can't have, like if you removed it saying that someone has an interest in the specific plot, wouldn't be able to vote on it or bid on it.
If they were a mining claim, they have two levels of interest. They have both the mining claim interest, because they therefore have an interest in the subsurface, as well as the surface interest. So yeah, they would both be able to have a sealed bid, in my impression.
Do you have a technical opinion, or do you want to wait?
I just want to make sure I understand the language that they're talking about removing, because as I understood it, if you hold a land interest in land adjoining borough land, you could still participate in the land sale ordinance, in the direct sale. That was what I thought was being proposed.
That is being proposed. If I can expand on that just for an instant, no matter what their land interest was in the adjoining property, as long as it wasn't just a borough land, because if they have a lease or an easement or something, then they're not owners, because the borough is the owner. Then if they're adjoining and they're either an easement or a mine claim or an owner, a flat, either fee simple or an owner, even if their fee simple actually is constrained by having bought state lands, they're still an adjoiner, and any adjoiner can then approach and try to carve out and buy some borough lands.
It's assuming they have an adjoining interest.
Yes,
interest is solely in that property.
An adjoining land interest per the ordinance.
So it might help to clarify how land interest is proposed to be defined in the ordinance, which is fairly broad. It's either an ownership interest in land or one where the interest is less than the full interest. So things, Mr. Milne is correct, things such as leases, easements, the mineral interest, those all would be included as a land interest. So it's not strictly ownership.
Right, that's my point though. My point is that mineral interest, let's say you have a mining claim that has a mineral interest specifically only in that parcel that is up for sale, without any adjoining ones, just mineral interest. So they then have an interest in it and could purchase it the way it's written now. But if we were to take off the fact that they can't have an interest in that specific land, then that person could have that land bought out from them with a competing mine next door.
I see what you're saying. Yes, that would be true. Yes.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Roberts.
So would you say that the issue is complicated enough that it would probably be best to remand it to LMAC to make sure that the language gets worked out correctly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Milne? I look like you wanted to say something, or you just... Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Milne, for your service and for your time and testimony. So I have Mr. Roger Berggraf for the empty seat, and Mr. Stenberg.
My name is Stanley Stenberg. I'm 72-year resident of Fairbanks. My family's been involved on Big Eldorado Creek.
We need your address, if you don't mind. Your address.
P.O. Box 71848, Fairbanks.
Thank you.
My family's been involved on Big Eldorado Creek since I was born in 1945, and probably a year or two prior to that. I acquired my interest in the property by using the state process and converting from federal ground to state ground, which I accomplished in 2008. And one of the situations that we've experienced over the last 70 years is not a constant thing, but it goes in spells called problem vandalism. On Big Eldorado Creek and on that RS 2477 trail that cuts through that, which my father built in the eastern half of the valley. I'm here because I have no interest in 22 claims in the eastern half of the valley, and an additional 4 over on silver, which are contiguous to the claims I have in Big Eldorado.
I was encouraged when I saw this ordinance come up because it looked like it might enable me to purchase 10 to 40 acres on one of the parcels that I own so that I could establish a secure yard and facility. Back in the 50s and 60s, we didn't have the technology to efficiently mine the ground. The pay streak is 40 feet in places, deeper in other places, and it requires heavy equipment or some other scheme. And I'm working with people at Fairbanks Excavation who've been doing due diligence and getting ready to go through the drilling process. I need to be able to purchase ground to provide for a secure facility that would be offset from that trail, wouldn't impact the trail in any way. And most of our mining activity would be south of the trail, on the creek bottom. Previously, mining in the area has been through sinking of shafts and drifting. And now we anticipate a production of in excess of 10,000 ounces of recoverable gold, which is why we're still in it. I realize that there were some problems with the ordinance as written, and I think sending it back to ILMAC for review would be a good thing, and I would probably support whatever they produce.
Thank you, Mr.
I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Stenberg. Let's see if there are questions for you. I don't see any. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming down and telling. That's fine. Next up in the MTC is Mr. Haltman. Mr. Berggraf, your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Roger Berggraf. I reside at 830 Sheep Creek Road, Fairbanks. I approve of the sale of borough land so long as it does not come in conflict with adjacent property owners. I feel that the rural made a mistake when it selected mineral lands, on which there had been previous mining. Mining is a particular type of industry that requires a substantial block of claims that have mineralization on it that makes it economic to mine. So I've had problems with the borough, and they're trying to manage mineral lands, and it's been a conflict all along. It appears to me that the language of the proposed direct sale ordinance 2017-71, which is up for passage this evening, has gone too far in expanding the ability of the borough to sell borough land without sufficient public process. It is important that the public input be allowed if the subject is controversial. I request that the Assembly either amend the proposed ordinance language to using the language words in line 72, quote, change the wording, authorize the mayor to sell borough lands directly to those holding a land interest in land adjoining borough property, or the ordinance be referred back to LMAC to reconsider and revise to protect the interests of the industry and also provide a future possible source of revenues for the borough and the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Let's see if there are questions for you. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. McGrath, what's the economics for an owner of subsurface mineral rights who has an opportunity to buy the surface rights but has to compete with an entity or an individual that wishes to use those surface rights for some kind of tourism business? In a bidding situation, I would think the owner of the subsurface rights, assuming that it proves out there's nothing there, would have a lot more economic incentive to bid on that surface rights than, would bid more, would be willing to invest more for the surface rights just so as to remain unimpeded.
Well, the miner might possibly, if he has gotten the project to the stage where he's ready to start mining. It costs a hell of a lot of money to develop a mine today, and with the requirements for exploration and drilling and then permitting, there's a heavy cost involved. And one area that's in contention right now is the old Stratford mine. That has had a record of mining for years, and in today's industry, in today's method of mining, there's a lot more involved in developing a mine, especially with the potential that area has for developing into possibly another Fort Knox. And let's face it, the borough gets a lot of revenues from mining. They benefit from the taxes that people that work in the industry pay to the borough. And I just feel badly if the borough scuttles the possibility. In today's world, it takes small miners and medium-sized miners and then large mining companies to make a decision to mine. And it's important that that be considered in looking at the mining industry. Look at Fort Knox, look at Pogo, look at International Tower Hill. They provide, Fort Knox and Pogo provide a lot of revenue to the borough and provides livelihoods. So that's my comment. I'm sorry for taking so long.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Lawrence?
I guess so. Mr. Berggraf, would it be your preference that the borough own lands with mineral rights, with potential minerals in them, not lease or sell surface rights to anybody other than somebody who wishes to mine?
Well, in some ways, it can be a way if you have a large block of claims and there's adjacent borough land that's leased or sold to a competing interest, somebody else that has a non-compatible use. I believe in the proper use of our land and the opportunity to derive income from it. But when you have, you've seen where you have subdivisions right next to mines, it's a natural conflict. And when people start building houses right adjacent to mines, you got trouble. And no big company is going to want to have to get tied up in that kind of a mess. So I believe in trying to insulate the miners or the people that have a mining claim that has definite potential for creating something that's going to generate revenues. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Burgraff? Seeing none, thank you. So next I have Rolf Dubrovoli. You'll tell me how to say it properly. I apologize in advance. Mr. Holtman, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Sven Holtman. I live on 720 Old Murphy Road, PO Box 10707 in Fairbanks. And I own Argument Ventures, the company that this is mostly talk. But first I want to talk about the general picture before I go into the specifics. The borough, as we all know, is in a budget shortcut, and with this ordinance, it will be a major possibility and opportunity for the borough to create some additional revenue. In the time for everything, everybody has to tighten their belts. 80,000 acres, we heard from Ms. Wagner. This is only a small piece. Like I said, I will get into it. And so this would be a way for people to be able to buy land. Now, with this particular piece of property that I lease from the borough, called Argument Adventures, I obtained a very legal lease. We went through the most public process that I could possibly go through with meetings, and we were in here. You guys voted on it. Doors were open. No opposition came. That I got this lease. We have a Northern Light viewing business, dog sledding business, and we serve people. I got the lease in 2015, and ready with my shovel to hit the first post in the ground. And since then, we had people from all over the world, 60% mostly from Asian countries, that come to watch the aurora and to enjoy the dog sled rides. First year, we had 2,300 people already. Second year, we had 3,100. And from September till the end of the month, we already had 2,300. So we're going to probably be double from first year. That's just 2 years down the road. With that, I create revenue. These people stay at the hotels here in town. They eat in restaurants. They go to shops. They buy souvenirs. I just paid my property taxes here a week ago. I pay a lease fee for this lease. And it's all about this mine that might never go through, or I might even come in here with a walker when that happens. And at this very moment, right now, tonight, I got to run after this because I have an order light viewing tonight. This is all real. Everybody's invited to come up there. It's a public lease, so you can come unannounced. I have borough employees come to my property in the spring and in the fall to check everything out. We are all legal because I'm such under public eye, especially now. I would be a fool to not go by the complete rules that the lease is providing. Of course, I'm supporting this ordinance, and I urge you to vote yes, because I could also, with a possibility to buy it, the miners could buy it. Everybody in the mining community can bid and can put in a bid for this property. That I could increase this property, it would protect my investment. I would feel more safe to spend more money on the property that I could buy instead of on the property that I lease, that I don't want to spend another whatever amount on it to grow this company. And so I think it's a benefit for everybody involved.
Thank you, Mr. Holtman. Let's see if there are questions for you.
Ask anything you want.
I don't see that no one seems to have any questions. You must be very thorough testimony. Yes, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down and testifying. So the parcel that you're leasing now, how big is it?
19.8 acres.
19.8 acres. And are you surrounded by mining activity currently?
No, the only thing, nothing is happening right now. There's a lot of talks about mining activity to the west of me, but there's nothing happening.
If there were mining activity to the west of you, would it interfere with your business?
That would depend totally on the scale of the mine. A small couple guys with a loose box, no. Fort Knox style, absolutely would interfere with my Northern Light viewing business. I probably would have to shut down the Northern Light activity just because we promote unobstructed northern sky to see the best Northern Lights. So I would have to probably shut down that part of the business if this will go through. But I have other avenues, dog sledding. I could still do dog sledding. I still could do cabin rentals. So that wouldn't be the end. So it doesn't mean that a mine and my business cannot coexist. Because if it's a big mine, I could still go back to dog sledding. It's a big part of the business.
Just a couple additional questions, Mr. Hodge. So, do you have any sense of how far away the proposed mining would be from
Actually, the very west part of my property, I would say, I don't know exactly the numbers, I would say probably about 5 acres, actually overlaps. So the lease property on the west overlaps with some of the mining claim, but I don't have any improvements or anything on there, just raw ground.
And how much do you have invested in improvements in your property currently?
Probably about, I would say, $200,000 to $250,000.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down. And I have Charlotte Davis up next. And Mr. Dobrovolny. I'll work at it. Thank you very much. Your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, so my name is Ralph Dobrovolny, and I live on 2240 Hanson Road in 99709 Fairbanks. I'm on the board of directors of Explore Fairbanks. Several of our members approached me about this ordinance. They are very, very much in favor of it. When I first heard about it, I was surprised that there even is a question if this ordinance should be approved. Now I see all the opposition. Since months, we have discussions about budget cuts in Fairbanks. Explore Fairbanks tries to come up with ideas how to help. And here we have a perfect tool on our fingertips to get money into the budget. And we are not sure if we should use it. That will raise a lot of questions in the tourism industry. A lot of questions with people who try to help Fairbanks to bring money in. If we don't put this ordinance in place, then how can we ask the people of Fairbanks if they agree to raise the property taxes next time around? But let me back up a little. I know out of my own experience how hard it is to lease and then buy property around Fairbanks. I tried with BLM, DNR, and Fairbanks North Borough. A lot of the land is tied up by mining. And I'm not talking about working mines. I'm talking of claims that cost next to nothing, but preventing other industries to move in. There are claims in place for 20, 40, 60 years who promise that maybe someday something will happen. In industries like tourism, we cannot afford to wait 20 years. We just heard a statement of Mr. Altman. A lease brings already more money into Fairbanks than a claim. And if we do our job right, then after a couple of years, we need to invest more in the land. Doing this on a lease that can be pulled is a big risk. So we want to buy the land eventually. Now there's a big chunk of money coming into Fairbanks, the sales price. The properties we are talking about run at about $50,000. Let's do this only 10 times. Will it help the budget if we suddenly found $500,000? I have about another 30 seconds. Can I go on? Yes. Thank you. On the top of that sales price, then, of course, is the property tax, which is much higher than what the lease costs, and I'm not even talking about the cost of the claim. I don't need to explain how important tourism is in Fairbanks. That tax and other contributions speak for themselves. Tourism is growing in Fairbanks. We need space to expand. The ordinance would give us the means to grow and to help Fairbanks and the Fairbanks budget to be healthy again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see if there are questions for you. I don't see anything. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down. And we have an empty seat. If there's anyone else that wishes to speak on Ordinance 2017-71, Ms. Davis, your name and address for the record. Welcome back.
Charlotte Davis, 5820 Chino Hot Springs Road. Been on the Land Management Advisory Commission since its inception in 2000 or 2001, and I have never come down here to speak against an ordinance that I voted for. But after voting for it and thinking about it and then reading the ordinance, I had this pit in the middle of my stomach that made me physically ill. Cannot put an absolute finger on it, but I felt that we needed to go forward and listen to everyone else. We needed more input, not just the members of LMAC coming up with these ideas. I'm 100% approve moving land into hands of private citizens. This ordinance started out as almost like a remnant, if you pay attention to the initial language, was to dispose of, or I should say, sell remnant lands, and somehow we kind of took that and rearranged it, and anyway. We did not do the job that we intended because we wanted to protect not only the leaseholders, but also those that had the mining claims. We were trying to reduce the conflicts that have been occurring and which we could see occurring in the future. I don't know if there's an answer to this, and maybe we have too lofty a goals, but that was our initial goal, was to move land, avoid, reduce conflicts, permit miners to buy the land that their mining claim was on so that no one else could buy it. We were trying to help everyone with this ordinance, and I don't believe that it does that. Certainly, the most part that I still don't understand is how land interest is defined. That makes no sense to me. It doesn't say, Mr. Roberts said someone could lease land and then in a year go in and try to, well, I don't want that. I don't want people doing that. We've got to come up with some way so that there's not a run on leases and land sales and whatever. So we need to do this responsibly, and we need to be able to make sure that we don't end up with a subdivision next to a mining claim, active mining claim now or active mining claim in the future. So I would like to either have you vote this ordinance down. I've never asked you to do that for something I was initially for, or remand it back to the LMAC Commission so we can maybe rework it, rethink it, especially with all the wonderful testimony that we got today.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Let's see if there are questions for you. Yes, Ms. Major has a question for you.
So just to re-ask, your major issue with the ordinance as proposed is the definition of land interest?
Right. I don't understand it. I'm sure other people don't understand it, and I think it needs to be defined a little better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Of course, with lawyers' input.
Yes. Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Mr. Prax. And there's an empty seat if there's anyone else that wishes to speak.
My Prax, 1015 Meadowview, North Pole. Thank you. And these land disposal ordinances can get very complicated, as you well know. And I don't have a real good feel. I hope this is not being rushed for one specific project, although it seems that that's done in good faith, and I don't think anybody's objecting to people that are certainly from the public. I don't want to give the miners an advantage or somebody else an advantage. We want to keep it equal. But if there is some pressure to do this for one specific thing, be very careful of that, because we can shoot ourselves in the foot, as Mr. Roberts expressed a concern. When I read through this, my concern was that somebody with, if you will, just a malicious interest, anti-development interest, could come by later and buy something, lease something in a process and kind of get around it. And to be honest, I don't know if this prevents it or promotes it. I don't understand it well enough, but I'm very concerned about that. There's an outfit, a conservation outfit, that is supposedly buying up worthless land out in different areas. And the way that works out is that through their sale, the contract to the borough, they lock it up beyond the public's ability to change it later if we wanted to do something different. And to be honest, I'd have to go back and look at it to get the details and show you why. But I don't think that all of those lands that this Nature Conservancy, I can't remember if that's even what it is, I don't want to blame them. But anyway, buying that up, how they get the money, I don't know, but it comes off the tax roll and just sits there. And by contract, the borough can't do anything with it, was my feel. And I certainly don't want to see any more of that happening, and I certainly don't want to see a malicious effort. And I don't want to accuse the people that are doing that. I think that it was all done in good faith in that case. But there certainly is a possibility of abuse, I feel. So if this is rushed for one specific thing, I'd be very careful. And I think there's a pretty good argument for sending this back to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and then that the borough is aware of the land that they have and managing. Because you can't just hold it forever, as they put. You can't hold it forever for minors because there's other things that can be done. And if we're doing that, that's not right either. So that's a tough thing.
Thank you, Mr. Brax. Let's see if there are questions for you. Ms. Tony, thank you for coming down. Anyone else wish to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one coming forward, I'm going to close citizens' comments for a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Techie and seconded by Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Roberts, you're up first.
Well, first I want to apologize. I was, you've heard 3 testimonies from LMAC people regarding their vote and on the 4th. And we did have meetings on it. We talked about it. And it's my job, especially as an assemblyman, to analyze the bad possibilities of an ordinance and where it can go and make sure that things are safe, that we're not going to encounter these situations. And I didn't do my job very well because, as was pointed out, once we got to this point with the first testimony coming in last month, it really pointed out that problem. And it's not just about this one situation. It could apply to a lot of things. You could have someone go out, get a property for like a paintball lease, which we've done, and somebody could get a lease for that just because they want to get this nice piece of property, and they do that, and then they turn around and they buy it, and then they go build their house there because now they've got their nice piece of property. This could be a mechanism that could really be abused. And so I am concerned about it. I do think the language needs to be changed, but I think it's safer to send it back to LMAC to work on that language. There's no hurry for this. We need to really make sure we get this right. So in order to do that, I want to make a motion to remand this back to the Land Management Advisory Commission to take whatever amount of time they need to work the language and then bring it back to us. And I'll speak to that more if I get a second.
So let me make sure I've got your motion down. So it's been moved to remand to LMAC to take whatever amount of time they need, and I think the clerks will prefer some kind of time period.
So to speak to that?
Well, let me, so to remand to LMAC to take whatever amount of time they need, and then what was next?
To modify it as they wish and then bring it back to us. And send it back to the Assembly with their
Wish.
either redone ordinance or with their recommendations. I don't know how you want to word that.
With recommendations?
Since it's already an ordinance, I imagine they just have to give us recommendations. But.
Okay. And the second was Mr. Lajewski. So it's been moved by Mr. Roberts, seconded by Mr. Lajewski, that we remand to LMAC to take whatever amount of time they need to modify as they wish and return to Assembly with recommendation. On that motion,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Roberts wishes to speak to.
So first, I want to talk about the time frame. You can't have it at the next LMAC meeting, which is this next week, because public notification's already gone out and you don't have time to change the agenda. So it doesn't even come up till March for the next LMAC meeting. And sometimes the LMAC meetings don't happen because of quorum. So it's really hard to set a definitive time frame. And sometimes you have to work through the issue and you bring it back. They took a few meetings to get it to this point. So I just want to point out on the time why we need to give them whatever amount of time they need to bring it back to the Assembly, to bring their recommendations to the Assembly. Basically, I think I said most in the intro. There's just some potential there for abuse, some details in the language that I don't think we want to try to fish through and work out tonight. And so we want to make sure that things happen correctly. And so I think it's appropriate to send it back to LMAC, have them look at it, and get it back to us in a reasonable time frame. That's it.
I apologize for the huddle. Mr. Lawrence is up next, and he's wanting to make sure that he can speak to the substance of the ordinance, and I feel that that's part of the discussion about the remand, so I rule that you can speak to the reasons that you might want to vote to remand or not. And Mr. Mayor is next.
All right, frankly, given what we've heard today, I'm inclined to probably vote in favor of this motion. I'm just frustrated that Mr. Roberts made it before we could have any real discussion about this ordinance. But I'm going to discuss it briefly. From my perspective, there's a difference between an operating mine and a mining claim that's not operating, and it has a different value to this community. I believe that if there's a land with significant minerals in it, the highest and best use of that land is to mine it. And I don't want to see that cut off. However, as was mentioned by a couple of the businessmen who are making money for this borough right now, there's claims out there that have been unworked for decades. And I'm not inclined to give those claims or that land as much protection. And I know there's been some concerns and objections about public process, about public having input on this. This ordinance doesn't change the existing code that provides that this assembly has to approve any sale of property. And this assembly can't do anything without public input. So yeah, I reject that concern. Maybe we can make it better by sending notices out to adjoining property owners in the area. I'm not clear on what the code says regarding that at this point, but there's going to be public input in any of these sales decisions. And in some respects, I think that it's an economic decision here. Whoever is willing to pay the most money for that land maybe should get it. I mean, that's kind of the way it works in a capitalist society. So I don't really have much more to say. I don't want to, really put a huge roadblock to developing minerals in this borough. But then again, I don't want to just keep land, fallow and just unused for year after year after year while the owner of the claim tries to raise money. And it is expensive. I understand that. Raise money to start an operation. So it's as Mr. Prax said, this is a really tough issue, and I don't necessarily want to vote on it tonight. But I do say, I repeat my opinion that an unworked mining claim doesn't do this community very much good. That's all I got.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and then Mr. Cooper.
Okay, I'm just a tad discouraged here with the way this is developing because we're tasked with selling land. We're encouraged to try to move it. The genesis of this actually came from miners who wanted us to shorten the process in being able to acquire land. It was discussed at quite a few meetings at LMAC. previously, and the decision was unanimous. And after making that decision, they found out that, well, not only does it help the mining community, it helps everybody else in acquiring borough land too, anyone who has an interest in it. That's what we should do. We're creating legislation here that's for the community. We're not pro-mining, we're not pro-tourism with this. This is legislation for selling land and being fair and equitable for anybody who's interested. I totally agree with Mr. Prox about we shouldn't rush for one piece of property. What we're doing here is we're stalling for one piece of property. We had good legislation that went through process, and now we want to stop it because some folks figured out that, wow, it might, in this particular case, not do what we want. I don't think that's really appropriate. And we can send it back to LMAC, but clearly the intention here is to we're focusing on one parcel and one case, and we're trying to tailor legislation to that. The appropriate place to address a specific parcel is when it comes to you for approval. And then we look at each individual sale. We look at each individual lease. When you create that interest in borough land, it comes to you. It's a public process, and we're not just throwing leases out there for everybody. We're trying to sell land, and you folks encourage us to sell more of it and streamline the process. That's what this does. It's a level playing field for all interested parties. It sets us up, as Mr. Lawrence was saying, for getting the best value for a piece of property, and it comes to you to decide if that is for the best use and best interest of the people. Mr. Roberts has talked about potential for abuse. There's potential for abuse in the existing system, and it's your job to decide when it comes to you on each individual case, to decide if we're abusing something or not. And to try to create legislation that can't be abused, frankly, is impossible, for one. And we created the level playing field here with this. Now we're trying to change it and tilt it for this one specific parcel in one direction and send it back to LMAC for that purpose. We can do that, but I'm saying let's be cautious about trying to legislate for a specific instance as opposed to legislating for our community, moving property, which is in our financial interest, and we can use the money, trust me, and make it fair for all parties concerned, whether they're miners or Martians, or tourist folks. I don't care. Let's move the real estate on it. It's adequate public process. We've talked about, well, there's not enough public process. The idea of this was to shorten the public process so that we could move the land more quickly for people who already had an interest in it. And I think that's very reasonable to accomplish. And it protects the public process with multiple meetings, and you folks are the ultimate judges. So I think we know enough to vote on this evening because we shouldn't be discussing the specifics of one land sale. We could discuss the specifics of the problems that Mr. Freeman brought up with the existing. We've had the exact same abuse and the exact same problems under the existing system. This doesn't change that one way or another. It just shortens the meetings getting us there, and it all comes to you folks for adjudication at the end. And I fail to see the logic in the change that has been suggested that we're going back to LMAC to try to create here, is to give more of an interest to a adjoining landowner over the person who has the interest on a specific parcel. I don't understand the logic in that, unless you're talking about this one specific piece and you have a specific interest regarding that parcel. And that shouldn't be part of legislation, one way or the other. So I think we have enough information to make a decision this evening, and I would encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm reminded that this is actually a referral, not a remand. So just for calmness. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Well, with regard to the referral, speaking to the mayor's point, on one hand, I'm okay with referring it back to LMAC to think about this. There's some issues that have been raised. Perhaps there are ways that the ordinance could be tuned up a little bit, perhaps addressing what interest in land means, making that definition more clear, what level of interest in land is sufficient to then proceed to a direct sale. Is a lease sufficient? Is an easement sufficient? Whatever. At the same time, I say that with a caveat to LMAC, which is that I think that whatever comes back has to be fair to all of the landowners that are potential buyers of the property. I don't think that the amendment that's been proposed tonight accomplishes the goal that people think it accomplishes. I don't think it leads to a fair result either. So I don't know that proposed amendment is a starter for me personally. I personally think that the ordinance as presented is actually fair to property interest owners. So if it doesn't get referred back for further consideration, I would support it as is because I think it is fair.
Okay, so now Mr. Techie, and then, I'm sorry, Ms. Major. You had your, kind of, and then Mr. Techie, and then Mr. Lawrence, and Ms. Mayor.
Excuse me. So I do believe that the ordinance as presented still allows for the public process, right? And it still allows for the assembly to be involved in everything that comes with that. But I also agree with Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Roberts. There does seem to be some confusion. We certainly had lots of testimony asking for it to go back to LMAC. I think the one thing that I'm frustrated by is the timeline that Mr. Roberts discussed. I think so often, and I'm sorry if people can't hear me, excuse me, I think so often, just, when we refer things back to committees, it lengthens the process sometimes much greater than would be beneficial to the community or to the borough, but we certainly have had some pretty overwhelming testimony asking for it to be referred back for some work. But I do want to just reiterate that I do believe the ordinance as presented absolutely still allows for that public process.
And if you want to, you could make a motion to amend the amendment. Just anyone could. So the motion, thank you. And next I have Mr. Techie.
Awesome, thanks. My stance from reading this and hearing from everyone tonight is right in line with the mayor's opinion on this matter. Everyone, it sounds like it was reworked multiple times by LMAC. It had a unanimous decision of approval at the time, and the mining community actually had that interest in the process of helping develop this, and it makes it a completely fair and equitable approach for everybody that has a land interest of some type to be able to bid on it, allowing for capitalism in our community. So right now, those mineral rights are in there, and the person can still have their mineral right claim even though someone else may own that land. And hey, rural reviewing might only last for 10 or 15 years, but the mining claim will still be there. It'll still be available. So I think that taking into consideration that, everyone has gotten a little sparked up over this specific plot, I think if you take that out of consideration and you don't think of that one land piece, and you think of how this affects the community as a whole, it allows for a very equitable approach to be able to bid on it, which is what we like. We don't want to be holding on to properties. We want to loosen them up so that they can go into the community, so that miners could possibly buy that land if they so chose and they outbid the tourist industry. Then they're the ones that had won. So I don't think that we need to refer this back to LMAC in order for them to possibly make it worse than it is right now. It seems incredibly equitable to me at this time. And I think that we should vote on it tonight, in my opinion.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I have to concur with Mr. Tackey. I think the mayor was pretty persuasive here, and I do agree with the mayor that the concerns expressed tonight by the mining industry, it relates to one specific property, which is not the way to legislate, legislate an ordinance. And my reading of the definition of land interest, it's not confusing to me. I mean, I'm a real estate attorney, but I realize that it's pretty much means ownership, fee simple ownership if you're adjoining property, because obviously if you have fee simple interest, and the borough has no interest, but or it's a lease or an easement or a mineral interest, and I think it defines who the parties and participants can be, and I don't really know how this ordinance can be changed so as not to create or not to create a playing field that is going to significantly favor one industry over other industries, and I'm not in favor of doing that. So I'll be voting against the referral.
Okay, Mayor, have you next?
Yeah, several people have kind of identified questions about the interest in the land and the definition thereof, and I'd like our attorney to address the definition of interest in land.
I think unfortunately we're on the referral motion.
We are on the referral. We're kind of exploring why we do or don't support the referral broadly, but
Okay, so I guess to the extent that I can
then it helps clarify whether or not.
So I'm not sure what the confusion is with the definition of land interest. I mean, it's not only is it defined, but there's examples provided within the definition. And so I don't know, short of restricting it or changing it to modify what interests qualify, I don't know that I have suggestions to improve this language if the intention is to include interests such as things like leases and mineral estates. So I think that's what the mayor wanted me to clarify.
Mr. Wojcicki, you're next.
Well, I appreciate the intent behind the ordinance completely. And remind everyone of something you probably all know. Last I checked anyway, less than 1% of all the land in Alaska was private lands. I'd like to see that go up, and this does work in favor of that. So I'm wholeheartedly, really support the concept behind the ordinance here. But also just a couple of facts that I keep in mind here, and something reminds me on that little quilt over there, the guy with the red shirt right next to the projector, that looks like Felix Pedro to me. Found gold here in 1902, started in 1901. And so our town was founded on mining, and it is very, very important, and I hope it will continue to be important in the future. And you can only mine where the minerals are. You just can't build a mine wherever you want. And so that simple fact it stays in my mind here. But for aurora viewing, and I'm not saying this is a conflict, I think you can do both. Aurora viewing is a little more flexible. There are more places you can do aurora viewing than you can do mining, in my humble opinion. So anyway, with that said, LMAC, we had what, 4? Was it 4 people on the LMAC committee? That's nodding his head. Yeah, so 4 people who voted for it have said, you know what, I got second thoughts. We want to think about it a little more. So the simple fact for me is I'll support it to go back to LMAC and see what they come up with, even though this will delay things by several months. And I plan on likely supporting whatever they come up with, because I do, support the process, or sorry, the concept behind it. But as of right now, given the concerns that are brought up, I'm voting no if this comes to, not on the current motion, but on the actual ordinance. If we go back to it, I'm voting no on that tonight.
On the referral, Mr. Roberts.
Okay, so I think the problems have been pointed out, and they're more than just the one incident. That's why I tried to bring up an example. It's a process that we didn't realize it could be abused. Now, I've seen a modification of their amendment, and maybe we could amend it, but it's always worrisome to amend it on the fly. This is an ordinance that has no pressing need. As everyone knows, I'm all about selling land. That's why I'm on LMAC, because that's what I want us to do, is sell more land. And I've brought lots of land ordinances forth to this assembly because of that, because that's the goal. But we definitely want to do it right, and we don't want a process that can be abused easily. I mean, sure, everything can be abused in some way. It's impossible to write perfect legislation, but we see the problem now. We didn't see it in LMAC. Now 4 of us have regretted it. We see that, okay, we need to look closer at this. And looking closer, we might see more of an issue than just this particular one, but we at least can work on getting that one right. So I would ask you to vote to refer this so that we can make sure that we have a good product that isn't going to be abused, and that really takes into account more than just selling the property and making the upfront money. As was mentioned by one of the testifiers, we're trying to avoid land use conflicts, okay? And so this doesn't necessarily get us there. That same potential for abuse can create those land use conflicts. And so we need to look at that as the assembly. We need to look at making sure we minimize land use conflicts with any of the laws we have related to land. And so that's why we have such a complicated sale process, because we want to make sure that that's done in the complicated land use laws, because we want to make sure that that conflict is minimized, because we've had too many problems in the past in Fairbanks. So please vote yes to refer this.
Thank you. I have Ms. Major, and then I have Mr. Cooper.
So I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment, and that would be to have LMAC provide their proposed ordinance no later than 2 meetings from their January meeting.
So you'd like to amend it to say refer to LMAC to take whatever action, to
essentially putting
return,
them on the timeline.
pardon me?
To putting them on the timeline.
And return to assembly with recommendations within 2 meetings after their first meeting, you said?
After January, so if January
within 2 meetings after their January meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
You want me to try and read it again? I believe the amendment, certainly the intent of the amendment, is to refer to LMAC to, and so seconded by, we'll give it to Mr. Gray. I heard, no, Mr. It was, no.
It was Mr. Gray, Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, I thought I heard another one. Okay. Refer to LMAC and return to assembly with recommendations within 2 meetings after their January meeting. Roughly.
Right. So it just is putting them on the timeline.
So, do you want to, so that's what you have to say. So, I have Mr. Cooper next. On the
I have one question, just to clarify. Mr. Roberts, how often does LMAC
meet?
So it's usually every other month, so if all the meetings take place, that would be recommendations finished in the May meeting.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Cooper, on the proposed amendment to the amendment.
I guess my only concern with having a May deadline is it's right in the middle of the budget process, so realistically we're not going to deal with it until January, rather than June. Sorry, J months.
Right, because we don't tend to have meetings at the end of May, and LMAC's kind of in the middle of the month, so it's probably going to be June before we would see this.
Okay. On the amendment to the amendment, any other discussion? Yeah, thank you. The amendment to the motion. Yes, Mr. Wojcicki.
Lance, or Mr. Roberts, is that sufficient time for you?
I think that will be fine for the commission.
So ready to vote on the amendment to the amendment, and it will not carry, obviously, any motion. Mr. Gray, carry that to the motion.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Tackey.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none? Thank you. The motion is now amended, and that's what's in front of us. Any other discussion on that? I think we're discussed out, so we're ready to vote, I think, on the amended motion that we will refer to LMAC and return to Assembly with recommendations within 2 meetings after their January meeting.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Yes.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
No.
Mr. Tackey.
No.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
No.
Ms. Dodge.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
5-3.
The ordinance 2017-71 is referred back to LMAC and will be returned to us within 2 meetings after their January meeting. And with that, we are taking a... Can we do a 5-minute break, guys? We'll aspire to a 5-minute break. Okie dokie, we're going to call this meeting back to order. It's about 9:15 on January 11th, and we are at ordinance number 2017-63, and that is an ordinance amending chapter 21.28, Fairbanks North Borough Code, to add provisions for electrostatic precipitators and gasification heating appliances. The sponsor is Assemblymember Roberts. It's on page 112 of our packet, and there is a proposed substitute in your yellow folder. Mr. Roberts, do you have a staff report?
So, we talked mainly the substitute, but I'll point out the differences between the original ordinance, which is what the Air Pollution Control Commission considered, and the substitute. So,
and the substitute's on page 121, by the way.
Okay. The original ordinance, I was trying to do 2 things with this ordinance, one of which was to define gasification heating appliances, because a lot of people got these great stoves from Europe. In fact, the boroughs later on today voting on one, a gasification one that we're getting from Europe. And they're really nice stoves, and they spent a lot of money to get them. And so that they didn't have to go through the Air Pollution Control Commission to get a waiver on what we know is going to be a clean-burning stove, I was trying to help save them the time, both the Air Pollution Control Commission and the applicant. The Air Pollution Control Commission, though, wasn't excited about that idea, so I removed that from the substitute, so we're not dealing with gasification appliances in the substitute. So the substitute is just about electrostatic precipitators. An electrostatic precipitator is this wonderful proven device that's been used out there in the world in industry and commercial use it basically ionizes the pollutants coming out of a stack, attracts them to the side, the stack gets cleaned out on a regular basis, and you just remove a humongous amount of pollutants, most of the pollutants. It's just an incredible device. They've got them in Europe where they created it for residential use, and they're using a lot of them over there, and now they're coming into the U.S. So it's not an EPA certified device. EPA doesn't certify these types of devices. They do the wood stoves and the pellet stoves and such like. So we need to come up with some rules for it. And the goal of this is to get people to put them in. But an electrostatic precipitator removes pollutants. It's not like a new wood stove that burns more efficiently and saves you money. It doesn't save you any money. So you've got to have an incentive for people to put one in. You're looking at a cost of labor. It might be $2,000 to put one of these in. So what kind of incentive are we going to give them financially so that someone would want to put one of these in and clean the exhaust out? And so what I decided on was that they could burn at stage 2. Right now, you can burn stage 1 with a waiver if you're borough listed, but you still can't burn at stage 2. And so I said, hey, if we have this device and you have an ESP, then you could burn at stage 2. And that would be the financial incentive to get them to put one of these devices in. Now, I changed it in the substitute from the original ordinance, just any stove, but I've changed it so now it's a borough listed appliance. So your wood stove has to be a borough listed. And then if you put an ESP on it, then you can burn in stage 2. Right now, even though we have borough listed stoves, we don't let them burn in stage 2. This would allow it. So they have a very clean stove and an electrostatic precipitator. So it's an incredibly clean operation. And that's what would allow them to burn at stage 2, and that's the incentive. Then there's some other cleanup language in the ordinance. Also, we inserted into the wood stove changeout program, but what's important to that right now is that EPA funds can't be used for it because of the rules the EPA puts on their money. And so while that will be in here, it won't have any effect until another source of funding comes around that would allow that. So that's just putting that in here for the future in case we do get some other funding, as sometimes happens. So that's the ordinance.
Thank you. And does the administration have a staff report here?
Mr. Miller. Thank you. A couple things that I'd like to bring up, and we also have the co-chair of the Pollution Control Commission, Kathy Cahill, with us here tonight, and she can provide some perspective from the commission meeting from December 12th and their feelings on the ESP units. So, in short, the Air Quality Division doesn't necessarily have any objections to the use of ESPs. The objection is to have ESPs allowed to be used during a burn or a stage 2 restriction, or basically allow those stoves to continue to burn during those stage 2 restrictions when air quality concentrations or PM concentrations are high. So there's a couple of things that I'd just like you to think about as we work through this ordinance. The ESP devices currently are not eligible for the targeted airshed grant funding that we are currently working under. The borough doesn't have any other funding for the wood stove changeout program other than the EPA money that we received. And ESPs are not an eligible expenditure for that. We all know that ESPs, these devices are proven technology. They're used in a lot of steady state operations, primarily such as power points, but not in residential wood stove units because that's not a steady state operation. You have a variable operation there. In Europe, they are used over there, but there's a fundamental difference between wood stove certifications in Europe and the United States. In Europe, the emphasis is not so much on certification, but on
annual inspections, site visits, and we don't do that here. We don't have the authority to do that here. We don't have the resources to do that here. And I'll give you an example of in Zurich, Switzerland, the requirements for a wood-fired device with a rating of anywhere from 0 up to 239,000 BTU, so pretty much covers all wood stoves, hydronic heaters, pretty much anything that we would see in a residential installation. They have requirements for annual inspections to verify the proper device operation and use of clean, dry fuel. They also have a requirement for annual chimney sweeps by certified personnel. All hydronic heating systems are subject to emission measurements every 2 years. Only dry and untreated wood may be burned, and in case of doubt, an ash sample is collected and analyzed by a local laboratory and judged by the authorities. Now, we certainly don't have the resources and an authority to do that. So this is why we and all other regulatory agencies in the United States rely on EPA certification for these devices. The EPA certification is the gold standard in the United States in which all these appliances are judged by, and we use to determine should they be used or not. These devices are not EPA certified. In fact, I had a discussion this week with somebody from EPA, and they said, that they would love to be able to certify these things and look at these for an aftermarket or retrofit device, but they certainly haven't submitted anything to EPA, nor does EPA have any type of testing protocol associated with the ESP. So, looking at the substitute, and even in the original, one of the real issues that I have as far as the division that's going to be administering this program, in the definition of the ESP, it specifies that it's a device that's designed to use electrostatic precipitation to remove an average of 85% of particulate matter emissions from the exhaust of a solid fuel burning appliance. Now, as someone that's going to be administering this program, how will that 85% effectiveness be determined? How will we do that? And will we simply use a manufacturer's claim, or will some type of testing be required? And the manufacturer, and we heard from one manufacturer, the SoQ2, can the manufacturer be a home hobbyist? I can certainly see that happening with this definition. Or does it have to be a nationally recognized firm? So, and if testing is required, who is going to do that? Who's going to develop the matrix and perform the testing? So all of these questions come to mind, and I'm sure that probably none of you really have the answers to that, but this is why that we rely on EPA certification so heavily for everything that we say we're going to allow to be installed. The EPA certification is the gold standard, and these devices don't have that. And I guess I'll leave you with some information. A number of years ago, there was another aftermarket or retrofit device that was installed in a number of coal and wood boilers here in Fairbanks. This was a program that I believe was paid for with state grant money. The outfit that provided the retrofits was called ClearStack, and it was a proven technology. They were catalysts, and they used an electric heating element to keep the catalyst active. And those of you that know about catalyst, it's a proven technology. It's used even today in automobiles, wood stove, and other applications. So there wasn't a problem with the technology, but there was a problem with how it was being used. And we're trying to do the same thing here with ESPs. ESP, once again, it's a proven technology, but it has to be coupled closely to what you're doing. The automobile manufacturers back in the 70s learned that the hard way when they tried to clean up the emissions from automobiles, and they put catalysts on vehicles in the early 70s with no regard to what was happening in the engine, and it was a massive failure. But now, catalysts work really well because they figured that out. So if we try to put ESPs on devices that aren't necessarily designed for that, we have no assurances that the emission levels that are coming out of the stack are going to be reduced, or they're not overwhelmed because of the combustion that's happening. And we know that there's a lot of issues with improper fuel, improper operation of the stoves, even if it's a certified appliance. So once again, I don't think this division has any objections to the use of ESPs, but we do object to using ESPs and allowing stoves to continue to burn during stage 2 restrictions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your staff report, Mayor? Or
other than we have some concerns also about the SIP and backsliding, and we just received a letter from DEC regarding that, and it just got passed out to you. So the director for air quality from DEC spoke with the folks at EPA and tried to get a feel for what their thoughts would be if this would be considered backsliding or not, and we don't have a definitive answer, although it looks like it would very likely be considered backsliding, quoting her letter. Obviously, we could try to change that opinion by applying or requesting EPA take a deeper look at it or somehow revise that, but currently their opinion would be that this would constitute backsliding. Which then puts us, obviously, out of compliance with our SIP and more problems after that. So their recommendation would be that we really don't want to go here. Thank you, and I think that is the end of our report.
did your chair of their quality commission want to be part of your staff report or speak later with questions?
I'm not sure which Mr. Miller had.
I'm perfectly happy to speak to the charge you guys gave us 2 meetings ago in terms of Air Pollution Control Commission time. We did meet and evaluate the ordinance, and after a lot of discussion and 2 meetings, we produced a letter with recommendations that is in your packet. It's page 120, and the considerations really came down to it. These aren't EPA certified. We are excited about the technology, but we were concerned about backsliding and the fact that EPA has not certified them, and they would be considered as increasing emissions during a stage 2, because currently stage 2 is no burn, it's no emissions. So anything we do produce would be considered backsliding, as the mayor just pointed out. The EPA ruling appears to be. So we had recommended that you not accept the ordinance as is. It was a 4-to-1 vote, and that we really do encourage the manufacturers to work towards getting these EPA certified. We applaud the citizen science that is occurring to test them in our conditions, but right now, with the serious nature of the air quality issue here in Fairbanks, we do not support the ordinance because of the stage 2 in particular.
Okay. Thank you. So presumably that concludes your staff report.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to open public hearing. I have 10 people signed up. So what I'm going to do is go through our list, and when we get to the end of the list, if there's people that still want to speak, then we'll make that opportunity available. I apologize for the late time, and appreciate you all hanging in with us. So first up, I have Megan Wilson, and next I have Michael Pollan. If you give us your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
Megan Wilson, and I live at 321 Sapphire Drive, Fairbanks, Alaska, 99709. So good evening. I'm basically just going to mirror what you just heard from the staff report. So I'm here to testify on electrostatic precipitators on the ordinance that's in front of you, as a community member of Fairbanks and also as a member of the Air Pollution Control Commission. On the matters regarding this ordinance, I personally have not had a large role, as my work schedule and teaching a class at UAF at night has kind of prevented me from making the last several meetings, but I've listened to every single minute of the audio track, so it's about 5 or 6 hours of meetings that we talked, or that members talked about the specific ordinance. So I wanted to speak here tonight because I think it's important to know that the Assembly knows that even though the ordinance as written was as supported by APCC, we were very enthusiastic about the possibility of ESPs being part of the solution to our air quality problems. Major concerns that have been kind of outlined and I'll underline here is that these devices, how these devices function in Fairbanks' extreme temperatures and the types of wood that we burn are basically unknown. I am a supporter of new technology and using it to solve our issues, and I am supportive in looking into ESPs and how they can possibly improve our air quality. However, as this ordinance is written, it allows individuals to burn at a stage 2 event. So during the stage 2 event, this is when basically everyone should do everything they can not to burn wood, not to burn coal, or other high PM 2.5 emitting sources. So it's important that the Fairbanks Borough tries to clean up its air without causing backsliding in the eyes of EPA. I appreciate this ordinance as it's designed to incentivize our community members to install these types of devices. But I think the reward should be something other than allowing people to burn when exactly we should not be burning. So maybe another kind of incentive would be something more monetary. So I thought, and this is definitely just a suggestion, that maybe a tax on a break on their property taxes, say like something like $200 or something like that for the first year where the ESP is installed. And then to make sure that it remains effective, to go ahead and do chimney sweeps, certified chimney sweeps, and if they bring in records showing that they got those chimney sweeps done, so making sure that the ESP stays effective and that they're reducing chimney fires, then they could get another incentive of say $200 that year or whatever. Let's see here. Another issue regarding burning allowances is that the air quality division is understaffed. So trying to determine who has an ESP and who doesn't during a stage 2 burn is going to be very challenging, especially for the people when they're on the ground. So thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Let's see if we have questions. I see Mr. Gray has a question for you.
So I agree with you. I think that people should be incentivized to try out this new technology. I think it's a great thing. Love the idea of it. But I guess, would you think that also perhaps the potential for them to collect data and give that back as part of the research, you think that should be included as well?
That would be awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for Ms. Felstein? I have one along those same lines. It seems like a demonstration project would be an interesting way to proceed if we could.
So Jeannie Olsen is working on that right now, and maybe she'll speak on that tonight. I'm not sure if she's still here behind me, but yeah, she is currently doing that. So that is a generation of some preliminary data, but it's an N of 1. Right, it would be awesome if we could have more, but there's also, we did talk about that at the APCC meeting about how much it would cost to look at all these different appliances with all these different types of wood and all the different conditions. So it's all about funds and what we have.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Felstein? Seeing none, thank you for hanging with us and for your service. Mr. Duffy, I have you up next in the empty seat. Mr. Pollan, your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Michael Pollan, 1606 Heather Drive, Fairbanks 99709. I would actually like to speak in favor of the substitute ordinance. Full disclosure, I'm also on the Air Pollution Control Commission. We considered the original ordinance, and in its original form, we were not very excited about it. And after considering that, I sat back and I thought, how could this be improved? And I sat down and wrote a list of ideas, and lo and behold, most of that actually shows up in the revised ordinance or in the substitute ordinance. Some of the things that are promising, this is a promising technology. It's really, I think it has a tremendous potential. The timer's not running, by the way. And anyway, and I like the fact that it focuses specifically on the electrostatic precipitators because that I think is an issue that we need to do here. The main concern with this is, again, this is not a proven technology in Alaska, so we need to test it. And to do that, we need to install some of these. We need to incentivize people to do it. And I think this ordinance actually provides a practical means of doing that. One of the big concerns, of course, is this anti-backsliding. Okay, so looking at anti-backsliding, what does that mean? That means that you are starting out at such a position and you are reducing your compliance standards, your compliance data, basically, and pushing yourself backwards. So my approach to anti-backsliding is what I call a mass balance. So I just sat down and did this. Okay, so here we have in Fairbanks, Alaska, if you have an EPA-approved solid fuel burning appliance, 2.5 grams per hour, and you burn this thing for a 6-month burn season, full-time, you would end up with a stage 1 waiver, where you're still allowed to burn during stage 1. You would burn about 10,000, a little over 10,000 grams per year of PM 2.5 would be produced. Let's do this in kilograms, so about 10 kilograms. If you did this in North Pole, because we have it, I'm subtracting away the stage 2 waiver time, we have to shut it down, it comes closer to about 9 kilograms. If you put one of these devices on, and even burn during a stage 2 waiver, you would burn about 1.6 kilograms per year.
I still breathe even when I don't have a stage 1 or a stage 2 alert. So we are reducing the load of PM2.5 in the entire borough. If you have enough of these devices, we might never see a stage 2 alert. If we have enough devices, we might never see a stage 1 alert. This is a technology I think has that level of potential. If you take 85% of the particulates out of the air, you bring North Pole into compliance with the current standards. That's a dream. I'd love to see this happen, but here's what's going to happen in this community. We made good progress finally on moving natural gas into this community. This is a big part of the solution. We are still going to have an infrastructure of solid fuel burning appliances. We need a fix for those. I think this may be a big piece of that. We need to test it here. We need to validate it here. We have some issues about EPA certification. I'm not sure how that's all played out, but I'm sure there are manufacturers that would find perhaps some market potential here and would be willing to invest in that. But whatever it takes, I think this ordinance is a solid step forward in that direction. I support it. I think nice job, Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Pollen. Apparently we don't have the current amended version, and it's coming to us.
Yeah, you bet. Assembly, we just realized in the packet, your packet in front of the proposed substitute has the original ordinance as it was introduced. This ordinance had a public hearing on October 12th, and it was amended, and then it was sent to the APCC. So we're making sure we have a copy, so you have a copy of the current ordinance before the substitute.
Thank you, Mike.
I've been looking 20 minutes for that amendment that I know is in there. I couldn't find it.
Your search is over. So, thank you, Mr. Pollen. I apologize for the interruption there. So, questions from Mr. Pollen? Yes, Mr. Lejeski and then Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm glad it sounds like we got someone who knows a lot more about this than I do, which is perfect for asking questions. But I'm curious about the backsliding. What are the penalties for it? And if the EPA thinks we are backsliding, do they give us a chance to rectify the problem before they bring out the hammer and start pounding us, or what's going on there?
This plays into the SIP. The bottom line is we have to develop a model that shows we will come into compliance, and the state implementation plan is that model. So if you have anti-backsliding, we have a provision now where we have at a stage 2 alert, you shut all the solid fuel burning appliances off except for those that have a no ash. So backsliding could be perceived during that moment in time where you have a stage 2 alert. If you do allow, now we're going to let a couple of other devices that have electrostatic precipitators go ahead and burn that were not allowed in the original ordinance. So that during that moment in time, the anti-backsliding affects just that stage 2 thing. The argument I'm making is let's look at this from an engineering standpoint. Let's look at the whole burden, the whole PM2.5 for the whole population during the entire burn season. And let's take that argument to EPA and to ADEC and say, well, you may say backsliding, but we're only talking how many days of this winter we had stage 2 alerts in Fairbanks, not that many, North Pole many more. But the bottom line, if you look at the whole burden on the entire airshed, this is a win. And I don't think it's backsliding. I would like to see us try to make that argument before we just throw in the towel.
So I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it. And I also, I guess you can probably confirm that this is partly what you're saying. If you clean up the air during the clean times, it probably takes more pollution to saturate them when the dirty times pick up because of airsheds movement and so forth. So you have a longer period of time before the stage 2 even begins. But I'm getting at what's the political and or legal punishments that DEC and or the EPA might use if they determine, and they don't buy our argument, that we say this isn't backsliding, they say yes it is. What can they do to us?
They could turn down the next version of the state implementation plan for the serious, be called the serious SIP. And it could delay, and we may have to come up with all the other alternatives, other pieces in the model that would offset that and reduce the total PM2.5 load in the airshed.
So you think if we...
I don't think they're going to come in with a fine book, if that's what you mean.
Okay, so you think if we judge wrong, that we can successfully argue that this is not backsliding? If we're incorrect, we will have an opportunity to fix the situation before something undesirable happens.
Yeah, the serious SIP is still a little ways out, not that far, but we've got some time to put that together. That's my opinion. You probably have others from the rest of the staff.
I think Mr. Lawrence is next.
Mr. Pollen, I think we all agree that there's a lot of potential for this type of technology, but what do you say to the concerns of from the administration and I guess the commission that is that these devices work really well as long as they're maintained correctly? But my understanding is that if they aren't maintained correctly, they don't work well at all. So how on an individual basis in the smokestack of residential stoves, how do you know whether it's being maintained and working correctly?
Some of those are issues that are answered by testing these out. Had some conversations with some people that know more about the mechanics of this than I do. One of the issues is how do you even know if the device is on? That's a relatively simple thing. You can actually put a sensor that comes down inside your house, red light, green light, on or off. How do you know if the device is actually functionally doing what you think it's doing? Well, that's going to require some kind of testing. And I think that's one of the things that the previous discussion was, we've got some budget issues on that. But even now, some of the little field test efforts that are going on, people are coming up with ideas on how we can at least validate the efficacy of this technology. So I think this is something that happens as we roll forward. Whether EPA takes these up as a device that they will certify or not, I have no idea. So this is not something that I think we will have to wait, or we should wait until EPA comes around and says, yeah, we're going to have a standard for electrostatic precipitators. I'm basing my finding on the data that's been provided so far from Europe, and the data that we're getting shows devices that we wouldn't even consider to be approved stoves. So these are solid fuel burning appliances that don't meet the EPA standards, and these devices are working in those, which is part of the reason I believe that Mr. Roberts had originally said, let's just put it in all solid fuel burning appliances. But now we're bringing it down to just those that are already approved under a stage 1 alert. So really the deal is whether we go allow those, these are devices being run by people. Get a stage 1 alert. You have to do it properly. You have to burn properly. You have to have the right kind of device. You have to cut, stack, store your wood. You're basically doing everything that we consider to be good operations. Now we're going to add this device, which is just really a simple metal strip hanging down inside the stack, and if it's on, it's working.
Well, it's working, okay, but isn't that what the results from Europe show? But that their regulatory format is maintenance. It's frequent inspection, and we don't have that here. So I guess isn't it more appropriate to test this device in this borough before we pass this ordinance?
Catch-22. Yeah. I don't know how you get enough devices in the borough to test it if you don't incentivize that somehow.
All right, thanks.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
So the original ordinance had a amendment in there to require annual chimney cleanings. Do you think that that would be a good measure to help make sure these are maintained, that once a year the owner would bring proof in that they had their chimney cleaned to make sure that the ESP wasn't getting overloaded?
I think that'd be an excellent idea.
Thanks.
Any other questions of Mr. Mullen? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you sticking around and your service on the Air Quality Commission. I have Jeannie Olson for the empty seat. Mr. Duffy, your name and address for the record, please.
Larry Duffy, 2712 Tall Spruce, Fairbanks, Alaska. I'm speaking in favor of this, the amended resolution to support the this one. As you know, we're unique. We have cold temperatures. The staff you have with the borough is excellent. They brought the EPA from Region 10 up here, and those individuals saw best practices around the country probably won't work in our conditions. And EPA has no interest in, from my point of view, in testing or doing any of this developmental work. So as some of the assembly members pointed out, you're in the testing and research type of area. This is a way of going ahead and getting that first problem. Do they work? And it's a research problem. What was mentioned is about 50 to 85% they're going to remove. So on the idea that if you keep burning them during the phases, you're going to be putting up more pollution. You're actually putting up some pollution, but less. And initially, I think that there'll be very few devices. But it'll give us, like with the citizen science group, it'll give us a chance to test it and go ahead and get some information. So I'm not too concerned about the second part, which is the regulation. Of course, the borough staff have to be concerned about the regulation and the SIP. I personally don't think that we will wind up, other than more modeling and stuff like that, to answer Mr. Lawrence's question about what's going to happen. Again, the impact of these is going to be minor initially, but we'll never know unless we go forward with trying these out at this particular level. Because for your information, you probably know, but there is Region 10, which is very sympathetic to us and helpful to us, and then of course there's the final decision makers in Washington D.C. And so we work well together with Region 10, with the other ones help. So the idea is we are, if we don't do it for ourselves up here and start finding solutions that will work under our conditions, which are only in here, Canada, even in Scandinavia, they have different conditions because of the airstreams and stuff. So I think along this particular line, that if you burn during those late stages, you're not going to be changing with a handful of stoves and have a significant impact upon what the levels of PM 2.5 will be during that thing. So I don't think there will be back slipping in there. And I am sympathetic to the borough staff's concerns about down the line, if they do work, do we have to do these inspections? Will people want regulations to go ahead and have inspections? That's a political problem that's further down the line. We just don't know if they work right now. And this ordinance gives us an opportunity to see if they work.
Thank you. So let's see if there are questions for you, Mr. Duffy. I don't see any. Thank you very much. So in the empty seat, I have Patrice Lee. She said she had to leave. Jimmy Fox. Ms. Olson, your name and address for the record, please. We'll have 3 minutes.
Jenny Olson, 1890 Hollowell, North Pole. Give you a little bit of other history about, at least 4 years ago, Okiosol, which is the company that makes one of the electrostatic precipitators, has been trying to convince a couple of the agencies here in this area to look at these in a serious way, and they just were ignored. So it wasn't until last fall when Mr. Roberts presented that ordinance that I hadn't heard of them and got interested in. So that's the rest is history right now, and the ball is rolling. As you know, I've got an Okio tube in my wood stove stack. It's very simple, and there's a little red light or a green light. I mean, it's on or off. It's it. And as of by the end of January, or end of this month, we're also going to put another Okio tube. It's coming over from Switzerland. Into a pellet stove system here, because they've shown over in Europe that they burn with an Okio tube in a pellet stove system. It burns as cleaner than natural gas. So we felt that was so important that we upped it to say we need another one over here, and Okiosol said, sure, we'll send one over. So that's what's going on now. So we'll have even more data. And I would say, Citizens for Clean Air, it didn't cost the borough or any government organization a dime last year when we collated a BAM with our neighborhood monitors, and we intend to do the same thing here. We hope we don't get a lot of roadblocks, but we aren't going to ask any government money for our testing. And we are scientists, and we will have a monitor called a Tesco 380, which will be able to detect the particulates. It also measures CO. We can also rig it up so that it can tell us how often the little spark thing gets sparked to precipitate out the particulates in the stack. So that information will be out there. We have a lot of ideas about how we can get these introduced into the community without having government regulations. Forming some kind of a co-op, actually. So we're working on that idea. Details, you can ask me, but I can't give it to you in 3 minutes. But I would say, this is physics. This is not politics. These things work in Europe. They work in Scandinavia. They're in Australia. They're in New Zealand. Okiosol is all over the world. Just because they're not American doesn't mean they don't work. And we are stuck with EPA certifications, which aren't even real life. I mean, think about how many EPA certified stoves burn badly because of the human part of it. And so it's the education is what we're needing. And what I'm hearing is from people all over the borough, so frustrated because they're trying to burn clean and yet they're not being allowed to. So this is another opportunity. I really think there are a lot of people out there that are burning as clean as they can, and then they don't.
Thank you. Let's see if there are questions for you. We'll start with Mr. Jackie, then we'll go to Mr. Gray, and then we'll go to Ms. Lawrence.
Hey, Dr. Olson. How long have you been using it?
I got it installed in late November. But there's been a lot of burn bans. so haven't burned much. But I'm intending to maybe just ask for an unofficial waiver from air quality for testing purposes. I could take a fifth and just burn it dark, which is what most people are doing.
So do you have to remember to turn it on and off?
No. There's a temperature sensor in the stack, and you can actually its default is any delta temperature difference, but you can change it if you want. There's little dip switches in there to change it, so you can change it. But it comes on automatically and then turns off automatically.
And how much do they cost?
They would probably retail $1,000 is what they really would be. And the markup would be $2,000 if it was commercial, which is why my idea of setting up some kind of a co-op would be a way better way. And if you're a member of the co-op, what we were thinking of is that a member of good standing would agree to then have, people that are part of the co-op be part of the annual inspections too. And as a member of the co-op, that's free for you. And so all we would then do is provide a list to the borough and say, these guys are the members of the co-op, and they are in good standing. Maybe.
And so that's like the $1,000 would be just for the unit itself rather than
Right.
installation and everything?
Installation is,
Reasonable.
in the summertime, pretty easy. It's just separating your stack and sticking it in there.
So then your position is to urge the passing of this ordinance to allow for exemptions, or let the co-op do it, don't pass this, and not backslide on the EPA?
I wouldn't worry about backsliding on the EPA. I feel very strongly, just like Michael Pullen did, that, on one hand, we are pleading to the EPA and DEC that we're unique. Well, if we're unique, then we're unique. And we can only, if we're unique because we want a 5-year extension, but we have nothing in our basket to help us out, then maybe this is part of the solution. Other than that, we got nothing but burn bans. That's our only thing, really. So I support this totally. And the cost, I haven't crunched out the, I haven't really used it that much, right? But, they're telling me it's the cost of burning a 30-watt light bulb. That's not very much for electricity. It just, it's just a 110.
Thanks.
Mr. Gray, you're next.
Sure. Well, okay. So my primary concern is different than Mr. Tacky's, I guess, and that's something I think that's being missed. And that's, if I understand staff correctly, if we were to pass this, this is EPA grant money, which this would be an unallowable cost with that grant money. And so, regardless of all these other arguments, we would really have no way to pay for these to incentivize people to do this. So, I do encourage the idea of what you're saying in the co-op, but I think that somehow there needs to be a private way to do this initially.
I don't think that. In the perfect world, it would be nice for people to get government handouts for this, but there are a lot of people out there that have used their own money to buy stoves, and that's where the beef is in the community. They've put out their own money to buy stoves, and they're being told they can't burn. So, I really think that if you told somebody, it costs you another $1,000 or $2,000, they'd be for it. They really would. And it's way cheaper than converting to natural gas.
Yeah.
And natural gas, I asked at the IGU meeting, when will natural gas get to my property? And they couldn't give me an answer. They said, well, it depends on how many people hook up, blah, 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 in Fairbanks. That's not North Pole. And they don't even have the pipe laid in phase 2. So if this is something we can do now. We don't have to wait till 2020 or 2025. We can start putting these in this summer.
So my question was to clarify costs, actually.
Yes.
You're saying the unit is around $1,000.
Right.
With what you have installed to make sure that's operating and monitoring and getting data, so you're saying a couple $1,000s at the most with installation and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Citizens for Clean Air is going to try and the monitor is $10,000 to measure the particulates.
Okay, yes, right,
the monitor.
yes.
So but you don't need a couple of those to go around the community and test.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lawrence.
Dr. Wilson, when so no testing has been done yet here in the borough.
Correct. We'll be hot and heavy on that by February.
I was going to ask you. So you expect this monitor to come in then? Sometime by February.
Oh yeah, it'll be coming in with the OKO tube for the pellet stove.
And you will be reporting the results to the borough.
If you'd like that.
Oh, we would.
Absolutely. I totally intend to.
But and just the incentive of this ordinance, it's not the money, because Mr. Roberts pointed out that we don't have any money to help buy these. It's the incentive is being allowed to burn in a stage 2. And so you've stated, how many days of stage 2 have you experienced this year?
It goes on and off so fast, I can't even begin to tell you. I bet at least 20 or 30. I have no idea. I can tell you that the highest my monitor has been is 661 micrograms, and I was not burning, and it was in the second day of stage 2.
Okay, but what this ordinance is allowing is for you to burn in that stage 2. Do you feel that you can test this device if you can't burn in a stage 2?
No.
Why not? Just because there's not enough days of non-stage 2?
Correct. And the other thing is that even though physics tells me electricity does not care what the rest of the world is doing, in other words, if it's 40 below, this thing is going to work. Or if it's going to work, it's going to work at 20 above, right? But one of the biggest arguments is that we don't know how it's going to work in our Arctic conditions, even though Scandinavian countries use these. So I'm waiting for the 40 below. I'm thinking we're going to get, the coldest it's been was 37 below in October at my place. And so I don't know if we're going to see those cold temperatures. I hope we do, only because I want to test this, not because it's cold. But when it's 40 below, I can guarantee you we'll be in stage 2.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. But if you're not in stage 2 now, right? I guess I could look up on
when I left, I was.
We are in stage 2 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can tell you, Mr. Lawrence, that when I have lit my stove, I watch the monitor and it doesn't change. You can burn clean, and this is going to be burning cleaner than clean. So maybe this isn't the best stove to put it on. It should be on a stove that burns dirty so that you can see the dramatic difference of what an OKO2 can do. But what I could say to you is that I would imagine most people that are willing to put the money out for one of these already are burning clean, and they have a borough-approved stove, and they've gone through those hoops already. So I'm very encouraged by this, and I would say that this is giving people hope, because they have no hope right now. There's no hope out there.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Let's see. Kathy, I have you up next. Mr. Fox, your name and address for the record, please.
Jimmy Fox, 560 F Road, 99709. I and many others have argued that local control is best, and I think what we've been hearing tonight exemplifies that. I can't imagine at the federal level trying to work some kind of solution like this, which is needed badly. So I appreciate what we're trying to do here. Local control brings about local ownership, and local ownership of the problem is what we need. So again, I support the intent here. I appreciate the maturity that's been reflected in the revisions. And I just want to say, again, the situation is perilous. We can keep talking about this, but people are being harmed today, tomorrow, next year. People their lives are being shortened, they're being harmed. So keep that in the back of your mind when you think about all this. And ideally, yes, we would do a full, robust experiment, but we don't have time. So
I mentioned ownership is essential, and I think what's been missing in the change-out program is ownership by the people that are participating in the program. We hear references made to people burn when it's dark. We've heard staff say they don't know because it's dark. There's a lot of uncertainty. So I think that what you've heard tonight on the testimony, and then also I think I have an idea that I want to offer to you as for your consideration. On line 89, for your consideration, I'd suggest something to the effect of to get at some kind of an experiment where you have local ownership and we're testing this device and we're reducing pollution. We don't know how much, but we're reducing pollution if we're trying. So for a minimum of 1 full burn season, the applicant would cooperate with a borough-approved personnel or borough-approved vendor to monitor performance and emissions of the appliance to inform future decisions to reduce air pollution and invest public monies. So we're improving the change-out program as we're learning. Monitoring shall include video, photographs, on-site measurement, observations, other actions deemed necessary by the borough. You can work with that, but it's the idea that I want you to get from me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Let's see if there are questions. I would just like to hear that language again.
Sure, I can do that.
And 89 of the proposed amendment, is that correct? Proposed substitute.
Okay. For a minimum of 1 full burn season, the applicant will cooperate with borough-approved personnel or borough-approved vendor to monitor performance and emissions of the appliance to inform future decisions to reduce air pollution and invest public monies. Monitoring shall include video, photographs, on-site measurement, observations, and other actions deemed necessary by the borough.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Fox? Mr. Wojcicki?
So I've got an analogy. I want to know if you think it's appropriate, but it's been brought up to me before that, with healthcare sort of things, that there might be a new technique, a new drug, whatever, and if it's not used immediately, it could prevent a lot of people from lives being saved. But the cost, potentially, if you're wrong, you could hurt a lot of people, side effects and things. And so that's why we usually test things. It sounds like you're making an argument here that there could be a cost, right? This precipitator might not work as well as we think it will. And so you could, add to the pollution problem a little bit. But on the benefit side, we could be, if we don't do this, we could be avoiding a whole lot of gain, basically. I don't know. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's probably a better way to articulate than what I tried. But yes, I think that, as you've heard, I think that anything we can do to reduce emissions, we should be trying to do. But we need to be learning from the experiment. We are in a tough situation, and the only way we're going to get out of it is experiment. We've got to be willing to experiment. And I see, in general, if you want to talk about camps or parties or tribes, I see a coming together to solve this issue, and I think this ordinance is a good example of that.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions at this time. Thank you for coming down and for sticking with us. Let's see, Tammy Wilson, I have you up next. So, Ms. Cahill, your name and address for the record, please.
Kathy Cahill, 907 Luther's Loop, Fairbanks, Alaska, 99712. As you've heard already, I am Vice Chair for the Air Pollution Control Commission, but what I'm about to say is my opinion and purely my opinion and does not represent the views of the entire committee. So I'm going to speak against the ordinance and the substitute. I am very excited about ESP technologies, but the costs associated with us potentially backsliding in stage 2 can be significant. It's for removal of highway funds. It is doing twice pollution offsets. The stick that EPA can bring to bear is significant. They try to avoid it, and they've been working very, very hard with us. We've already had delays. We got reclassified as serious. All of these are the types of things that show EPA that we're not making forward progress. And if we're not making reasonable progress, they're going to start taking control. At the moment, we do refer to a state implementation plan. What most people do not talk about is the federal implementation plan, which is if we do not work with the EC and EPA to come up with a plan that shows we're making reasonable forward progress, i.e. no backsliding, that the control can be taken away from us. This is not something that has happened often, but it is one of the threats. So when the conversation earlier was, what are the consequences? The consequences can be severe. We want to make sure people's health is protected, but we also want to make sure people stay warm. And new technologies are great. They need to be tested. And I think we can do a lot of the testing under stage 1, where you could try these and see, can we do Mike Pollan's thing and bring everything down so we never hit a stage 2? But we can't risk hitting a stage 2 and having somebody burn, because that's the backsliding that the letter you just got refers to. So I think it is something that we should be looking at. We understand the borough is limited in terms of funding, personnel, et cetera, for a large-scale pilot study. I applaud the citizen science that is occurring, and I think there is some good testing that could be done in terms of stage 1 and what happens when you put a bunch of them in. The funding, of course, is a challenge, and it's above my pay grade. But I think in terms of that burning at stage 2, it really is too big a risk. We don't know how these devices are going to work in our conditions. They work well in Norwegian countries, but as Mr. Miller said, this is a case where they allow far more intrusive monitoring, surveillance, making sure things are running. That's not the Alaskan way. Our attitude is, you come in my property, I will shoot you. So it's a case of, we have a very different culture, and it really does lead to a different set of solutions in how we have to approach it. We want to respect people's privacy and rights. This is something I am concerned about, though, with the stage 2, so I'm against the ordinance and its substitute.
Thank you. Ms. Cahill, let's see if there are questions for you. Mr. Wojcicki has a question.
So with regards to the EPA and DEC's stick, this is kind of what I'm trying to grasp my hands on is, I understand what you said of the ultimate stick that they have, but won't they give us warnings on the way there that we can modify our behavior?
Well, we've gotten warnings. We got reclassified from moderate to serious. That's a warning. That is already backsliding. So if we then continue the backsliding, there's no reason for them to work with us and grant us the extensions. Remember, they don't have to give us the extensions. We're requesting extensions to have more time to be able to implement this in a logical, reasonable way. They don't have to grant them to us. If they feel we are not trying, and they will see backsliding as us not trying, they can prevent the extension and go forward.
Any other questions of Ms. Cahill? Seeing none, thank you for your service and for coming down. And let's see, next up we have Christy Robbins, I think. Christine, sorry. Representative, welcome.
Thank you. Tammy Wilson, 571 Kenora. I'm not here as a representative, although I learned it was a 24/7 job a long time ago, so I'm not sure where else it's going. First of all, the only way we would be backsliding is if you truly believe that everybody in North Pole today, right now, as I'm sitting here, is not burning. They're burning. If I put in one of these devices, my wood stove will not burn worse. It's still a certified
appliance to give out so much emissions. So it can't be worse. It can only get better. And you keep talking about certification of the EPA appliances. They suck. They use stickwood in a controlled environment, and then they come out and tell you how much PM 2.5 is going to come out, how much your emissions is going to be. They don't use spruce, they don't use birch, they don't use any negative temperatures. You know how much state money went to just buying certified stoves that now we got rid of because they were above 2.5 and we couldn't get there? So let's don't count on the EPA to solve our problem. I want to thank Jeannie for what she's done. I looked at this 7 years ago and I couldn't get one because they wouldn't even mail them or ship them or even let me go to Canada and get one, because if you watch them, you just put them in. The devices, I could not understand at the time why we weren't doing it, except the EPA didn't like it. So where are we now? We're in a serious condition. We are over 20 days now in stage 2 in North Pole. It's about 27, 28 days between stage 1 and 2, and as you heard, it's kind of hard to know when you're in 1 and 2 because they transfer over so quickly. But since Christmas, I think we've actually had maybe 1 day where you were okay to burn. My house is 7 miles, and that's if you go straight through the woods to that monitor. My wood stove's not even impacting that monitor, yet I'm shut down. People down in Nordale are shut down because of that monitor. So they are frustrated. Also, we were told if we bought pellet stoves, we would be okay because they're clean burning. Now they're not okay. The rules keep changing. Now we have technology that's not new. It's new to us. I watched a video 7 years ago, and literally they took the cap off, stuck the stick down in there, showed how to clean it. It was easy. And I'll tell you right now, if somehow I can get a hold of one of those, I will buy one myself. And anybody want to come look at it and test it or whatever? Because I do think this is the way we get there. We're not going to make the deadline the way we're going. Do you know why? Because everybody can't afford to shut their wood stoves down. Right now, we're lucky that oil's down, but guess what? Oil's going up. What happens when we start hitting those high amounts again? People are going to start burning more. Right now, they can kind of afford to. But the only way we backslide is if you honestly can sit there and believe that as soon as the stage 2 goes out, that every stove goes off immediately. It doesn't happen. This can only make things better. And it's not about the money. It's about literally being able to heat your home in a way that you want to, but also being able to then be even more responsible than most of them are now.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Let's see if there are some questions for you. Seeing none, thank you for sticking with us and coming down and your service. I have Amanda Bird in the empty seat. Ms. Robbins, your name and address for the record, please. You'll have 3 minutes.
Christine Robbins, 1340 Arctic Turn Drive, 99712. First off, I did write out a lot of things, but I want to start by saying I have had asthma my entire life, and I'm tired of the fear-mongering that goes on about people in my situation. I lived in Missouri, Arizona, and Alaska for almost 30 years now, and no matter where I go, doesn't matter how clean the air is, if it's cold, if it's hot, it doesn't matter. I suffer from asthma. So that doesn't change my situation one bit. If it's really smoky out, the only time I ever stayed inside was when we had literally ash falling from the sky back when all those fires from Russia were coming over, and it was more from the frustration of what was there, Anyway, that being said, also I want to say something as to, I don't know the name of the guy who proposed a substitute, but I'd like to just state that that's a complete invasion of personal space and property, and I would never submit to someone taking a photo of my stove and inside my house, just checking on me. I hope you wouldn't either. So anyway, I'm here tonight to support this ordinance allowing for electrostatic precipitators to be used during a stage 2 air alert. This is a wonderful solution to any air quality problems that a homeowner might have, as it makes the output over 99% cleaner. So says an EPA.gov article. Also, I have documents from 1979 from the EPA on electrostatic precipitators, telling how wonderful they are, how to measure them, how to operate them, everything. If you want it in industrial size, whatever you want, it's out there. I found it, so I know you guys get it. It's simple technology. It's really old. It's over 100 years old. It's been around a long time. It's used by thousands of people all over the world, industrially here. And now they want to make a smaller scale for the home. So that's not really a scary thing. And like Tammy was saying, I pay $3,500 for my wood stove, Blaze King catalytic converter. I'd be more than happy to pay $2,000 for an electrostatic precipitator to satisfy whatever you think I, as an asthmatic, need. Break it down 10 years. If they give us a 10-year warranty, that's $200 a year. That's nothing. I pay about $2,200 a year to heat my house. So what we do is we buy about 3 quarts of wood, and then we fill up, maybe twice a year on heating oil. So it comes out to about $2,200. And so based on cost, we need that option. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there are questions for you. Seeing none, thank you for sticking with us and for coming down. We appreciate it. So we have an empty seat. If there's someone that wishes to speak on this that hasn't signed up, please come up. Ms. Bird, your name and address for the record, please. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Amanda Bird. I live at 369 Shannon Drive, Fairbanks 99701. I'm the biomass coordinator for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power on UAF campus. In 2014, a European company approached us with ESPs to put into Fairbanks, and we started to discuss a robust testing program. And it got to the point that the program is going to be expensive, and they were willing to test the systems, but we wanted to do a lot of testing, pre-ESP, post-ESP, on all different types of wood burners. And I think it's a great idea. I think the ESPs are wonderful. I think they're a great idea. They've worked on commercial scale systems. They're unknown in Alaska on residential scale. We don't have enough data. Spot data is wonderful. It's great, but it's not scientific. We need robust data if we're going to do something on a scale that is going to be widespread in the borough. One of the issues that I have with the ESP, if people have it in their homes, is let's say it does have the stated 85 to 97% effectiveness of removing particulates. What's that to stop people from saying, well, I'll burn, I don't need to burn super dry wood anymore. I can burn a little wetter wood, or I can burn lesser quality wood and still get the same effectiveness because the magic box in my flue pipe is going to take away all of those particulates. We don't know that. We don't have the stats to show that for sure. So I really suggest getting third-party testing and getting testing that's done through somebody that's not
having a system in the house. I think having citizen testing is great, but it's not robust enough. We need to have actual data by scientists who are third party who don't have a stake in the game. And then one thing that really disappoints me is the people who have gone to lengths to put in high efficiency, low emission pellet boilers that are proven to have very low emissions, very low particulates, and they're not allowed to burn at stage 2. Yet, the magic box, the ESP, that we don't know yet, they're suggesting that this can allow people to burn at stage 2. So I would just consider robust testing before we go ahead with more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bird. Yes, Mr. Lawrence has a question.
How many residences would need to be monitored, have ESPs installed and monitored for it to be in this borough for you to have a robust enough test sample?
To be honest with you, off the cuff, I couldn't tell you because I think there has to be a statistical look at the types of boilers, how many types of boilers there are in Fairbanks, and how many people are going to be putting these in. But it might be as low as 50. And 50 seems a lot, but it's really not when we have 100,000 people in the borough.
And you said that a manufacturer of ESPs approached, I guess it was ACE a few years ago, and wanted to do some testing, but I take it that they didn't want to spend as much money as would have been necessary to do robust testing.
Yeah, they were. I was rereading our conversation that we had in 2014, and it ended with, yes, we're very excited to look at the testing, and even the Swiss government was willing to put up some money, but for some reason the testing we couldn't find the funding for it, and they weren't willing to put in all the funding for it.
And how much funding would it take?
A lot. I think we're looking at a couple $100,000. But I'd have to. That's just, again, off the cuff. I think to go back to design a test, to design a robust test, looking at how many systems we're going to test, what kind of testing equipment we're going to need, how many homes, how many different types of boilers. I think, I honestly can't give a solid number.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Bird? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down and staying with us. I have another empty seat if anyone wishes to speak on this issue. Mr. Prox, welcome back.
I feel like I've been here before. Mike Prox, 1015 Meadowview, North Pole, 99705. And I guess I want to speak to a parliamentary consideration here. I'm in favor of this. I think we're on the cusp of something really worthwhile. And if I don't know where all you guys are at, but if you are having some doubts, Mr. Roberts, you should move to postpone. And if you have some doubts, you should postpone this rather than kill it. And sit back if there's something that needs to be in your mind, and I don't think there is, but if there's something in your mind that needs to be straightened out, move to postpone, don't move to kill it outright. Parliamentary procedure. I don't blame, I guess, the staff for their report. They have to say what they say, but we're just killing ourselves with these goofy regulations and assume that something's going to work the way we say. As Tammy pointed out, if we think that people aren't using their stoves in stage 2 just because we passed an ordinance, we're nuts. That's not reality. This is part of something that might work, and we've got to figure out some way to try it. And then we want local control. We have to stand up to the EPA. I got involved in this quite a few years ago and then lost interest, but at the time, when they were doing the testing, as I recall, and this was in government records, it was during the Palin administration, the monitor that they were using for the testing was not in fact certified for these conditions. It was a trooper pulling over with a Heathkit radar gun. It was bullshit. And nobody stood up to the EPA. They should have said at that time, they said, oh, well, we might have a problem. Come back to us when you've got a certified monitor, and then you can enforce this on it. Nobody did that. And that caused some animosity. And then we looked at it. I happened to be at a meeting. Who was it? Carl Minetti. And one of the borough employees pointed out that if we just went to dry wood at the time, they thought we'd get into compliance. And we'd save our backs or we'd save money. And so I said, well, this is an economic problem. This isn't a health problem. And Carl agreed with me. And I found myself, no kidding, in the office of the Northern Environmental Center working with those folks, and we had woodcutters and we had people trying to solve this without any government intervention. We thought, well, we got time. Let's give it a go. See if we can get this dry wood program going. And then an ordinance was introduced before it needed to be. And then everybody went back to fighting instead of working together. Now you've got a situation where people are trying to work together again. So don't kill this opportunity. Keep it alive at the very least. Don't kill it.
Thank you, Mr. Prox. Let's see what if there are any questions for you. Seeing none, thank you very much. So before you sit down, let's just make sure there's no one else that I think Ms. Olson would like to take advantage of the 1 minute rule when no one else wishes to speak. So it looks like no one else wishes to speak. So I just want to check. Thank you very much. And if this means if anyone else has a 1 minute that they wish to say something for a minute, you may do so. Ms. Olson.
Gene Olson, 1890 Hollowell, North Pole, Alaska. A couple of things I'd like to add. There's at least 400 pellet stoves in this area that we know, perhaps, maybe more. And if you wanted to consider just only allowing pellet stoves into this ordinance instead, make an amendment for that, that's a baby step. But I think you're going to get a lot of buy-in from the community. And the only way we're going to solve this, like Jimmy Fox said, is people owning this. We've got to own this problem, that this is our problem, and we can solve it. We can be unique, and we can solve it. This is not new technology. It's been used, and it's been scientifically proven over in lots of studies over in Europe. And yet, your next ordinance you're going to be looking at it is another non-proven unit in America, the Voltaire 40. Yet, there's a whole bunch of grant money that's going to get it installed here, and you're willing to test that and look at that, but you're not willing to test something for the residents. It's contradictory to me. Neither one are EPA approved. The air quality guy told me the reason that these aren't EPA approved is because they require electricity.
Okay. Let's see if there are any questions. Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else want to bite at the 1 minute apple? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close citizens' comments, and does the committee want a 2 minute break, or you want to roll on? Okay, so we don't need a motion because it is on the floor from 10, 12, 17, so we are at assembly debate and questions of staff, and I believe that what's before us is the amendment.
We'll move the substitute.
So Mr. Roberts has moved the substitute, and Mr. Lawrence has seconded it, so the substitute is in front of us. Assembly discussion or debate. Mr. Lawrence.
Given, like it or not, we are locked into a situation where we have DEC and EPA, very much involved in this process, and we can't ignore that. So I'm going to, I'll advise the sponsor that if at this point, I vote against this ordinance tonight, not because I'm not interested in getting these devices into some stoves and see what happens, but, just to say anybody can do it and burn during the stage 2, I think it does us, a disservice in the long run, at least with regards to the state and federal agencies. So, the idea of postponing, Mr. Prox, I think there's some merit to that because we may have more information in the next 3 months. But also, I really like Dr. Olson's suggestion of just limiting this to pellet stoves. And because, I acknowledge the more people we get to do this, and the sooner we do it, the better. So I'm just putting that out there.
Mr. Cooper and then Mr. Roberts.
Thanks. I can make some comments along the lines of those made by Mr. Lawrence, and I had a question for the staff, whoever might be the appropriate person to answer it, which is, and I'll preface this by saying I think the one thing that is missing is something from the EPA saying this is or is not backsliding. DEC's letter says we haven't formally asked EPA, but based on our experience, we think that this would be backsliding. Is there a process for getting a determination from EPA on whether going forward something like this is going to be considered backsliding that's going to impact us, or do we operate on supposition? And second part of that is, if there is a process, how long does it take to get an answer?
So we've had this discussion with DEC, and actually EPA was involved in these conversations. And the bottom line is they want to see what we're going to do and what the end result is going to be before they can determine if anything is going to be considered backsliding. So they're going to compare that to our existing SIP, the regulations that DEC has in place, and if it is determined to be backsliding, then they'll notify us. Now, how long that will take, I don't know. The problem that we have is we're currently under development of the Sirius SIP. We're under a very tight timeline. We're in the process of asking for an extension, and how that may affect it, I don't know. So, trying to get answers from EPA normally don't happen right away. So that's why we were trying to find out, where this may go, and this is the best information that we have at the time, is this letter from DEC about backsliding. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Castle, some data, I think.
Along those lines, EPA won't spend any time on making a determination until we have a finished product, because obviously we're adjusting and amending this tonight, and that could make a difference one way or another. So they're not going to mess with it really, other than a superficial review. Their superficial review indicates that this would be backsliding. It doesn't, in reference to some of the comments earlier about stoves burning during stage 2 out there, that not everybody is shutting down. That's irrelevant to whether or not this is backsliding. It's how it fits into our SIP and the modeling. It's not actual, it's modeling. And if the model shows that this would decrease our position, then it's backsliding. And it would allow burning during a stage 2. So it's going to put more emissions out during a stage 2. I'm not sure how we argue against that. It would take quite a bit of analysis to convince them, and we don't have the time or money to do that, neither does DEC. So it is a concern. However, if we are, if it is determined that there is backsliding, then what happens is they start a sanction clock, and we have 18 months to fix it, in reference to Mr. Lejeski's questions. If we don't fix it, things can get real serious real fast, because EPA has a number of different ways they can sanction us. We're available for sanctions at that point, 18 months out from when we start backsliding. So we're talking highway funds, possibly. We're talking the EPA putting in a federal plan, and we're out of the picture then, and they're managing this, and we have to operate underneath their plan, which would be way more restrictive. We, at a minimum, would go to what they call a 2-to-1 offset, which means they would kind of double the restrictions on us at that point. And so we're in a pretty tenuous position right now and working on our Sirius SIP. Because we haven't been making progress over the time clock that was ticking. They gave us 10 years and we didn't get anywhere, essentially, over that period, which is what has pushed us into the Sirius SIP that we're struggling to get accomplished. We're asking them for consideration in that. So I really don't want to annoy them too much, because if we don't get extensions that we've applied for, et cetera, we're going to be in a much tighter situation. So we need to be careful with this. Maybe we can tweak it to make it better. I have some suggestions for later that are not on the response to this question, but maybe we can look at ways to make this a little more palatable.
Mr. Roberts, do you mind if I clarify something with the mayor? So am I understanding that every change we make with our air quality program triggers a reevaluation of our SIP? Is that a statement that could be made?
Essentially, if they think the change that we're making is substantial or changes the control measures in the SIP, if we change any of that would negatively affect our performance, they would evaluate whether they thought that was significant or not. If we improve it, if we change the regulations to make it more stringent and doing more to clean up the air, they don't care. We can do that. So they're not going to do a review on that. It's only if they think we may be backsliding.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Okay, so can someone with staff or in the staff box tell me what percentage of people for the model does the EPA consider to not be burning in stage 2?
That is currently under review.
Do we have a current number? We're reviewing it, but do we have something we've been working on with the...
I think the assumption, the compliance rate, the assumption right now, because we don't have any numbers, is 20%.
20% would stop burning?
Right.
So that means 80% would still be burning in stage 2?
That's the assumption.
Okay, so based on that assumption, if we got a lot of these devices out there, you're not even talking a huge amount compared to 20%. I was thinking you were going to say a higher number. 20% is a very small compliance rate. But With this device, you don't need the high compliance rate. You can have the low compliance rate, and you're still getting less pollution. So my point is, we're not really backsliding if we get these out there, because even if these people are burning when they shouldn't be, they'll be putting out less pollution. I mean, 20% compliance rate, that's incredible. I had no idea you were going to do a number like that. So I thought the math Mr. Pollan brought out was excellent as far as looking at the overall picture through the winter, how much pollutants are we putting out, and how drastically they are reduced with a device like this. But now we're looking at stage 2, where we're assuming we might get a 20% compliance rate, and we can put these devices out, so it doesn't matter if they're burning in the dark. We're okay. So I hope everyone is paying attention to the math. I mean, that's what I do. I pay attention to math. But this is incredible. This device will help the situation and not hurt. And if it turns out that we can't convince the EPA of this logic, because as the mayor pointed out, they're not into reality, they're into their model, and maybe they're so hung up on their model they don't listen to us, and we'll make the case, maybe they won't listen to us, then we can roll it back. It can be rolled back later. You know, the EPA has their big stick, and we blame them, and we roll it back. That's fine. But we should at least try it out, because the math speaks for itself. We need something like this, and well, all the people need something like this out there in Fairbanks. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gray, you're next.
Sure. No, I do agree that we need something like this, and I'm hoping that nobody on this assembly is under the illusion that North Pole is not burning under stage 2. I think that all of us see comments that this is in fact still happening. We understand the frustrations and the lack of, it's difficult to understand all the regulations, as the mayor was saying earlier. I think if we can find a way to pay for these ESPs without violating our grant agreement in some way, shape, or form, would be the best way to go. I don't think that it's in the borough's best interest to jeopardize this grant funding or any other further grant funding by potentially going against this grant agreement. I don't think we'd do that anyway. And the fact that there is no set standard for these devices, that we don't know exactly how they're operating and at what efficiency. Basically, if this was funded by the borough, you're basically asking for larger government, more staff time to kind of come in and monitor these things. And I don't think that that's something that the community is looking for, is larger government in that case. So basically, we don't really have the staff to do it or the money to do it. So if we could find a way to get the money to fund these devices, I'm all for it. I'd love to see the borough and UAF perhaps team up and try to find some grant funding that would allow for this. To Dr. Olson's point, she said that she didn't understand why we're going to consider this other ordinance and that's testing or looking at an untested device, but not this one. But that grant specifically is for that purpose, whereas the money for this program, where we're considering amending this and adding this about ESPs, the grant was not for that purpose. So I think it's either if we can find some sort of funding to do it, do some research on it, or if it's going to be a grassroots effort. Either one, I'm all for that. I'd gladly participate. I'm in the non-entertainment area barely, but I'm not in the air quality control zone, so I don't know if that would do any good. I'd gladly do personal research and add to that. But anyway, it's lines 145 to 147 kind of kill it for me, because that violates our grant agreement, and I don't see how we can do that.
Mayor, I have you next. Are you still?
Thank you. Yeah, oh yeah, thank you. So I like new technology, and I'd love to test this a little more, because I think we need to test it before we try wide distribution. And I like Mr. Pollan's approach on this. However, he's assuming that these devices are operating as advertised, number one, and number two, that there be wide distribution of these. And I think there's a number of issues with wide distribution without understanding the technology completely and not adequately testing it. That's why we're testing a Volter. That's why we have a grant, and we're trying to push technology that helps cleaner air and cleaner performance. And so we got a grant to test one device. Let's get a grant to test maybe 50 of these devices and not distribute them widely across the borough, because if we do that and we find they're not performing as hoped, we're going to annoy a whole bunch of people that invested in when we change our rules again. And the number of complaints we get every time we change a rule, adjusting something, particularly if we're now saying something that we told you could buy and use, now you can't after they invested a few $1,000s. So I think we need to be careful with that and figure out how we're going to supervise this and be sure that things are going. We can't use the EPA money for this, and we've chatted with EPA. They're not going to allow us to use their money, so we're going to find a different bucket of money to utilize if we want to go along with that section of this ordinance. We need to understand with the SIP and the modeling and this backsliding, the model has to show that if we do everything in the model, we reach attainment. We understand our estimate is that with the new restriction that's just going into effect now in stage 2, the 20% compliance, we expected it would be dismal at the beginning, but as we enforce it, that number will change and we will get more and more compliance. And then the model doesn't show we reach attainment at 20% compliance. The model assumes that we're going to increase that to a reasonable level and get 90% compliance, and then we get into attainment. So these don't get us into attainment in the model. That's the problem. Unless we maybe have 95% distribution of them, they don't get us into compliance overall. That's why they use the model as opposed to actual, because they're looking at us getting to attainment and what it takes to get us there. I hope you can appreciate the difference on all of that. I'm concerned with how do we enforce stage 2 if we're allowing these, on the way this is written, allowing some folks to burn. We're going to have them register somehow with us so that we know, and that's not included in this that I see, so that when we drive down the street and we see a smokestack that's emitting, we know that, okay, we're not going to do a citation here because they have the appropriate device. So we're going to have to figure that one out somehow. And I appreciate the lady's comments about the privacy factor. We're going to have to also figure out some reliable way to make sure that these are being maintained. Europe's just a different regulatory environment than we have. I like ours better than theirs, and it's less intrusive. But how can we be sure that these are being maintained and operated properly? There's a little bit of a supervision type concern that we have with it. But I don't know if we wanted to limit the number and say we'll go with this for the first 50 people that register, or the first 100 that register these devices, and that's our test then, and we can use those as the sample. That probably doesn't get us into a backslide situation, but if we open the floodgates and I think that does. I can pretty well guarantee we've got a backslide issue if we were to do that. But maybe that's a way to do a test with these, because I'd love to test them. We need to do better. I agree with the folks that are saying, and I like to be creative, which is why we're doing Volter. But I don't think the appropriate course of action to test something is to just open this borough-wide, especially when we don't have money to support it. So those are potential improvements, I guess, to this.
Mr. Tackey, you're next.
I would have to side myself with the mayor and with Gray as well. Because of the fact that we can't spend the money, we don't have $2,000 to widespread these out for every household that needs them, and because it would backslide us under real restrictions that we do have from the EPA and the DEC towards our serious SIP and actually reaching attainment. I can't actually get behind this ordinance as drafted, possibly postponing it and getting another analysis on it or making some changes and tweaks to find a way that we can implement a grant or some kind of a study program. I like Mrs. Bird's comment about the fact that we should actually have like a real scientific approach to it rather than citizen science, and that's not going to hold up very easily and go and present that to the EPA. But I definitely would condone all citizens going out and getting one of these then if they so chose. There's no restrictions on being able to put an ESP into anyone's wood stove, so if someone had the inclination to do it on their own accord anyhow, I would be all about condoning that. But for us to pay for it and possibly backslide or harm our stance with the EPA, can't support that.
Mr. Roberts, you're next.
So I mostly wanted to address Mr. Gray's point. I can't remember if you were at the last meeting where I brought to people's attention that currently, because of the way the EPA grant is written, we're unable to replace certain people's wood stove that are eligible under our program. But the EPA gave us tighter rules, and so some people aren't getting replacements. And I have an ordinance coming up to address that we'll see. But I just bring it up to point out that we can have this language in here, and if the grant won't cover it, then it doesn't happen. They can make the choice because they've been given the ability to prioritize in this code, and so they can prioritize those things that aren't eligible as no. And so the administration has the full capability to not worry about this section. It is only there in case we do get some money in the future, and then they can choose to prioritize differently. That was all I had.
Given the restrictions that we're under with the SIP and with the need not to backslide, I think this ordinance is a pretty big overreach. But I'm in favor of what the mayor was suggesting of trying to come up with a test with a limited number of people, maybe just limiting it to pellet stoves. Although, frankly, if we're going to try to gather data, I'd like to see it be more of a variety. But maybe have the first 50 people who register and who are willing to allow testing and allow inspection, allow them to burn in a stage 2, because I think the mayor probably knows what he's talking about when he says EPA can probably accept that because of the attempt to learn what will work in this borough and what won't. Given that, I move to refer this ordinance to the committee of the whole and have it be scheduled to come up at the committee of the whole on February 15th to give us time to consider what I think are going to have to be very significant changes to this ordinance and to make it more of a test and to limit its scope and to try to come up with some real data. And that may be too quick. We may not be able to reach a concurrent, have a substitute done by then, but I think we should try. I think we're going to talk to ACE and try to get some input from them and see whether they are in a position to help test. So that's my motion.
I'm assuming that the entire segue was not yes.
Yeah, I moved.
I gave up.
I moved to. I moved to refer this ordinance to the committee of the whole. Meeting scheduled on February 15th.
Thank you.
I was trying to second that.
Yeah. So it's been moved by Mr.
Actually, I've said everything I need to say.
And I wrote down half of it. So it's been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Cooper to refer this ordinance to the committee of the whole scheduled February 15th. Is there discussion on the motion in front of us to postpone this to the committee of the whole? Yes, Mr. Wojcicki.
Yeah, well, I was thinking for main discussion, so I think that's still, it can bridge both topics, correct?
Needs to be on the motion in front of us.
Okay, well, I think this is relevant to the motion, so I would vote yes if this came about as is. But for the motion, if it's going to take some of you guys who are a little more skeptical to, sunset this in 18 months so it goes away for the EPA or limit it to a certain amount, then I'm willing to compromise for you, but I would prefer that we just pass it now.
Okay. Anybody else on the move to refer to the committee of the whole? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Wojcicki?
No.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Dodge?
Yes. Would anyone like to change the vote? Seeing none, it is referred to the committee of the whole scheduled February 15th at 7:1. And that takes us to, I would like to ask the organization about reordering our agenda. Pardon me? I'm hearing. Okay. Okay. So that takes us to ordinance 2017-70. Let me get my agenda out. It smells like exhausting here. I think we don't need to. Okay. It smells like exhaust. Yeah.
Smells pretty good.
Start getting rummy. Okay, that moves us to ordinance 2017-70, an ordinance waiving Title 16 for the selection and procurement of a Volter 40 model biogas gasification combined heat and power unit and for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power's related collaborative data collection and testing services. The sponsors Mayor Castle is on page 129. Oh yes, and before we move on,
yes, I need to declare conflict on these next two ordinances because
right.
The second one is we'll set up a contract agreement between UAF and ASAP and the borough, of which my office would approve and oversee, quite potentially me, myself. And this first one feeds into that, so I'm going to say that I have a very honest conflict.
I think that the borough attorney and I agree. Thank you. It's the fumes. Mr. Mayor, do you have a staff report?
We do. We'll go to Mr. Ben Leffler for that.
All right. As the title states, this ordinance waives Title 16 for the procurement of a Volter biomass gasification system and for data collection and analysis from the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. This is the second of 3 ordinances associated with the proposed biomass gasification combined heat and power pilot project. The first ordinance appropriated $290,000 in grant funds and reappropriated $290,000 in required local match. The third ordinance later tonight appropriates $217,945 in additional federal grant funds. The borough determined that waiver of Title 16 is necessary as competitive procurement cannot be executed based on the specifications in the grant proposals. This determination came as a result of the project specifications being selected outside of a competitive procurement process. Thus, waiver of Title 16 for the purchase of the gasification unit and ASAP services is necessary to accomplish the project as proposed in the grant applications and in compliance with grant procurement requirements. And that concludes my part of the staff report.
Okay, so that takes us to public hearing. So we're going to open public hearing on ordinance 2017-70, and I have 2 people signed up, Ms. Patrice Lee, who's not with us, and Ms. Bird. Please come down and thank you for waiting with us. And you'll have, please give us your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Amanda Bird. I live at 369 Shannon Drive, 99701. Once again, I am the biomass coordinator for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, located on UAF campus. I'm in support of the borough's proceeding with the purchase and deployment of the Volter combined heat and power system as a demonstration in Fairbanks and as a boost to the economic development, training, and employment in the borough area. There's over 100 Volter units that are installed across Europe and even in Australia. And I even had the chance to see the 2 units in Sydney, Australia, where I'm from. They're in downtown, where emissions are extremely strict. The strict emissions are also in Finland, where the Volter unit is from, and all across Europe. And the manufacturers of the Volter system ensured that the units meet the very strict regulations and at the same time produce high-quality heat and power at a very efficient rate. The Volter unit requires clean, dry wood chips as the fuel. The borough has an enormous biomass resource which is grossly underused. In the borough, there is a pellet processing facility that already produces wood pellets, wood chips, as part of their pellet making process. And this pellet processing facility is the largest in the state and is currently substantially underutilized. So a demonstration of this Volter system in Fairbanks as a grid-connected and an off-grid heat and electricity producing device will prove the energy savings potential of the unit, and it would prove the function of the unit in Alaska under our unique conditions. It would also provide an incredible testing ground for deployment in rural Alaska communities, where they could offset a portion of the very high cost of delivered diesel fuel and reduce the electric and heat generation costs in those communities. While the Volter units are as simple to operate as a diesel generator, the system requires operation and maintenance knowledge specific to the unit. So a demonstration of the unit would be a big step towards economic development in the biomass industry in Fairbanks. A local maintenance and training facility could be located in Fairbanks, increasing employment and training opportunities in the Fairbanks area. And I sincerely hope that the borough will move forward to procure the Volter unit using the funds made available through the Alaska Energy Authority's Emerging Energy Technology Fund Grant and the USDA Wood Innovations Grant that were awarded for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Good timing. Any questions for Ms. Bird? Seeing none, thank you for staying with us and for that testimony. So anyone else wish to speak on this? Seeing no one coming forward?
Move to adopt. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Cooper and seconded by Mr. Tacky. Discussion, debate. Looks like we're ready to vote.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Tacky?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Lajewski?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Dodge?
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
7-0.
It's adopted 7-0. And that takes us to ordinance number 2017-20-1P, an ordinance amending the FY 2017-18 budget by appropriating $217,945 in federal grant funds to the Capital Projects Fund to demonstrate a biomass gasification combined heat and power unit in a borough facility. Mayor Castle, Mayor Castle is a sponsor. Mr. Gray is already declared, and you have a staff report.
And we do. Back to Mr. Leffler.
All right. So this is the third of 3 ordinances associated with the proposed pilot project. The awarded funds are to be used for contractual services, and these will be related to the design of the installation, fueling and maintenance during a 2-year testing period, and data collection and analysis of the pilot project. The required match to this grant will be met with state grant funds and local funds already appropriated in last year's ordinance, and that's my staff report.
Okay. Well, let's open public hearing. I have Patrice Lee and Jeannie Olson signed up. They're not in chambers with us. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Ms. Bird, please come up and give us your name and address for the record, and you'll have another 3 minutes.
My name is Amanda Bird. I live at 369 Shannon Drive, Fairbanks 99701. I'm the biomass coordinator for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. We are very excited to be teaming up with the Fairbanks North Star Borough to provide robust testing of the one and only Volter unit in North America. That will be, well, actually in the US, I think there's one going to be in Canada. And we are very excited to show that a system that is very efficient at producing electricity and heat and has very low emissions can work in the Fairbanks area. And if we can show that it works in the Fairbanks area, we would love to deploy it into rural Alaska where it can really work and cut down the electricity and heating generation costs in those communities. So I would really hope that the funding is approved and that we can work together to these units.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Ms. Bird? Seeing none, thank you for your comments. And does anyone else wish to speak on ordinance 2017-20-1P? Seeing no one coming down, we're going to close public hearing.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Tacky. Discussion, debate. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
What facility is this unit? Have we selected the facility? I thought it was the Big Dipper, but where's it going to go?
Yes, the Big Dipper is the plant site.
And what is anticipated? Is it anticipated that this unit will provide all the heating and energy needs for the building?
No, specifically we look for a site where it will offset a lower percentage, so a site with a large capacity, so that you're never throttling your output down. So it's paying for itself every hour it's operating wide open, so we want to maximize that wide open operation.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, click. Looks like we're ready to vote.
Mr. Wojcicki?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Dodge?
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none, 7-0. It's adopted 7-0. Mr. Gray, please rejoin us. And that, yes, Mr. Roberts.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to finish out Resolution 2018-01 and adjourn.
Is there a second? So Mr. Roberts has moved that we that we change the agenda to complete resolution.
Move to suspend the rules.
Move to suspend the rules, so that we complete Resolution 2018-01 and then adjourn. So essentially, you want to suspend the rules for the completion of Resolution 2018.
I want to make sure that we get through it before we hit the clock.
Second.
And that's second by Mr. Wojcicki. Is there any objection? Yeah, was there any objection to us suspending the rules to complete Resolution 2018-01 and adjourn? Seeing none, our agenda is reordered, and before us now is Resolution 2018-01, a resolution opposing the State of Alaska's proposal to implement aircraft registration and fees for aircraft in Alaska. The sponsors are Assemblymember Wojcicki and Roberts. It's on page 148 of our packet. And Mr. Wojcicki or Roberts, do one of you have a second? For both. Mr. Wojcicki.
Well, as I think I sort of mentioned before, Mr. Prox was the driving force behind this. I wasn't paying particularly close attention to it. I'm very grateful that he brought it to my attention. And overall, I mean, I'll just start out by saying this thing's probably going to need an amendment because we do have January 5th in there as a date to direct the clerk's office to submit the resolution should it pass. And that was because January 5th was the last day for public testimony or public comment by email to DOT. And so it would have been better if we had this thing last month. But at any rate, the bottom line for me here is it definitely appears as if the agency, the DOT, is acting beyond its authority. And to me, it looks like it's trying to generate revenue, which you can't blame them for doing because they need more money, or certainly from their perspective. But they're doing it in a way that to me looks like a tax, and a tax is supposed to go through the legislature. So they're basically trying to force through a fee. They're calling it a fee, but in my mind, it's really a tax. And so they're just violating the process. I don't know that they're doing it maliciously or anything along those lines, but I think it's something where we need to stand up and say, hey, you shouldn't do this. And it is my prediction that there will be a lawsuit if they go ahead. So we'll end up saving the state money if we can encourage them not to go ahead with violating the process.
Okay. Mr. Roberts, would you like to add anything to that staff report?
I will add my points in debate.
Okay, thank you. Then I would look for a motion to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Second. So it's been moved by Mr. Roberts and seconded by Ms. Major. Assembly debate, questions of staff.
Mr.
Roberts and Mr. Cooper.
So, two things I want to say. One, since I often make the point about some of these resolutions about their applicability to us, I feel I need to make sure I make the point that this is extremely applicable to the Fairbanks North Star Borough. We have a lot of pilots and a lot of planes here, and most of them are not on the state airport, and lots of them don't fly to state airports generally. A lot of people who go out hunting with their planes, and they're out to the wilderness, and they come back to their private airport, and they never touch a state airport. So I think what they're calling a fee is incredibly inappropriate because fees are supposed to be tied to some type of benefit that someone is receiving. What I'd really like to point out, I hope everyone got to read through the packet that was sent out, the memo from Ledge Legal, I think it was Ledge Legal, but from some state legal person talking about how because the legislature had specifically repealed aircraft registration, that it probably isn't going to hold up in court if they try to do that via department after the legislature specifically repealed it. So I do think it will end up in court and we will lose. We, the state, will lose because it's just they're just bringing liability upon themselves taking this tack. So that's all I have to say on it.
Okay, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. That's good. I support the resolution for many of the reasons Mr. Wojcicki and Mr. Roberts have mentioned. I just want to make a few extra points. It's interesting to me that the general aviation community recognizes DOT needs more money to maintain and operate state airports, but over 66% of pilots surveyed by the Alaska Airmen's Association would prefer a fuel tax increase rather than this registration fee, because this registration fee is an end run around the legislature's inability to pass the fuel tax increase. Certainly DOT is looking for money where they want to, but this is the wrong way to do it. It's a little, I think, disingenuous on their part to link it to this registration issue, because the FAA and the state already have registration on information on most of the aircraft parked at state airports. Another interesting thing about this proposed registration is it disproportionately impacts general aviation pilots, the folks who are flying their own personal aircraft. Of the $1.3 million in revenue that it raises compared to the $10 million that would be raised through the aviation fuel tax increase, only $52,000 of that is borne by commercial aviation. So one of the problems the legislature faces is that the big companies like Alaska Airlines are lobbying really hard against a fuel tax increase because it affects what they pay for jet fuel. But to shift that burden to the general aviation community, in my opinion, isn't fair. And really, going back to Mr. Roberts' points, it does affect the residents of this borough. There are a lot of folks who own and operate aircraft in the borough, and this adds additional burden to them that they shouldn't bear. The increase in the fuel tax surcharge is the more equitable way to do this. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, 2 cents. Mr. Williams, are you?
Yeah, I'd like to, given the fact that the main opposition to this resolution, to this regulation at this point is the incurring a fee or imposing a fee. Ms. Dodge has received a text from Jim Dotson, who is extremely connected with the aviation industry, as well informed, stating that at the aviation board meeting this afternoon, the commissioner stated that they will be taking the revenue generation out of the registration proposal. So if you're going to oppose this registration, if you want to pass this resolution, it's got to be because of the registration itself, not because of the fee, because that evidently is going away.
Mr. Wojcicki.
Mr. Cooper provided some documents that almost all of them ended up being supplied in the yellow packet at my request, but Mr. Cooper identified them. And I don't know exactly where, but I hope you guys have had a chance to read through them before the meeting. I know it's kind of late notice, but they do pretty clearly state how
it really is redundant for them to introduce this registration system without a fee even, because there are a minority of the planes that it applies to, particularly for people in this borough. So we're introducing a huge hat to cover a little head, basically, or not us, but the department. So I'm still, without a fee, I'm still against it.
Okay. And did you have an amendment you wanted to make?
Yeah, I guess I do. Maybe a couple little minor ones. One for the clerk's office on line 71, where it says January 5th. If this passes, I guess I also have a question for the clerk's office. Do you have any problem sending it out tomorrow?
As soon as practicable, as it says, you can put a period there, we can get it out tomorrow.
Okay, so I guess and the amendment will have more, or we can do it separately, but we will, yes, delete but no later than January 5th, 2018.
Second.
Oh, yeah, let me. Okay, so it's been moved by Ms. Lejewski and seconded by Mr. Lawrence to delete on line 71, but no later than January 5, 2018, putting a period after practicable. Is there any objection to that amendment? Seeing none, it's adopted. Mr. Lejewski.
Next, just from speaking with some folks in breaks and so forth, it sounds like, well, first of all, January 5th was there because that was the last day for public comment via email to that particular address. And if they ignore us because we're past the deadline, it will still have some weight if we also send it to, I'm told, the commissioner of the DOT. So I don't know what the correct email address is, but if we say...
Let us know the commissioner of the DOT and we'll fill it in.
Okay.
So are you considering on line 73, transmit to the governor of the state of Alaska, members of the Interior Delegation of the Alaska State Legislature, comma, and...
Yes, and director of the DOT. Also, after governor...
Commissioner or director of DOT?
Commissioner. And also, I would like to add, after governor, also the lieutenant governor.
Let's do this. Oh, do you want to do it all in one or not?
Yeah.
Okay, after governor, you want to do what?
Lieutenant governor, I've been told that the lieutenant governor in the process is actually the end person.
So you want to say governor and lieutenant governor?
Yes.
Of the state of Alaska? Is there a second?
Second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Lejewski and seconded by Mr. Gray to add on line 73 after governor and lieutenant governor, and on line 74 after legislature, comma, and commissioner of DOT, period.
That's all for me.
Is there, yes, Mr. Roberts?
I just want to make a comment.
Okay, but should we finish this one first? The amendment?
Yeah,
Is there any objection to the amendment as proposed? Seeing none, it's adopted. Mr. Roberts.
So I was just going to say on the point about no fees that that means that this will actually cost, because they're going to be registering a lot of planes that they don't need to be registering. They're going to have to go out. They're going to have to find them. Have people who take the information. Now you got enforcement. You got all this. This is just going to be a cost to the state if they're not bringing the money in. So there's even less of a point.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence.
Question for the attorney. On the first page, the fourth whereas paragraph, it talks about Alaska Statute Title 2, Chapter 15, 190. Authorizing the department to collect, assemble, and publish aeronautical data pertinent to the operation of aircraft within the state. But it also states, the paragraph also states, the data may not duplicate data published by any other governmental agency. Did you have a chance to review the state law on this issue?
So I did look at the statute, and I also I saw the opinion by the legislative affairs attorney. I believe that DOT had an assistant attorney general also give us a contrary opinion to that legislative affairs opinion. So essentially, there is that authority in Title II to collect, but there was a previous statute that was repealed that specifically authorized registering aircrafts and collecting fees. And so the question is, what did the legislature effectuate when they repealed that statute? And so the argument is, of course, that the legislature intended that DOT doesn't have this authority. However, there is other portions of the statute that says the department has the duty to supervise aeronautics in the state, that they have broad rulemaking authority related to aeronautics. There's other language like in 215-190, which seems to authorize collecting that data. So I don't know for certain what a court would do with it. To the extent that there was some legislative intent there, I think it could be effectuated by saying they can collect the data but not the fee. I think that would reconcile the conflict.
Yeah, but what about that? 215-190 says...
Oh, about not duplicating data?
Yeah.
So my understanding is that the database for the FAA, it's a national based aircraft inventory program, and that DOT has to collect the data to input it into that inventory. So I don't know that it's a duplication of data, although it sounds like there may be people in the assembly that know better than me. But to me, it didn't sound like a duplication. It sounded like DOT needed to get the data in order to input it. So I don't think that would be... I don't know, though. I don't know enough, frankly, about the program to say that was
certainty. I don't know if any of us do, but it's implied at least that the FAA collects this information, so the state doesn't need to, but that may not be the case.
Yeah, and the justification by the department for this regulation that they put out was that the FAA requirements required them to provide the updates saying where the aircraft are based. So it contradicts that FAA already has this information. That's not what the department justification for the rule is. So.
All right. Well, in light of that, frankly, in light that the commissioner has indicated that he's going to withdraw the fee provision, I don't see any point in passing this resolution. I don't. If that's the case, if Ms. Dolan is correct that justification for this regulation is that the FAA wants this data collected because they don't have it, then I don't have any problem with the regulation.
Okay. Any other discussion, eliminating information, questions? Mr. Tackey.
Just that I would echo Mr. Lawrence's points. Same situation for fee was the original concern. The fact that most people registering their aircraft probably straight through the FAA, since there's a spot on their website where you can register your plane or drone. I'd have to say this is just unnecessary.
Any other discussion on the resolution? Yes, Mr. Lejewski.
Yeah, the alleged legal memo specifically says, and I'm not quoting directly, but the attorney, I guess it's Linda M. Bruce, she seems reasonably confident that, and from my reading of this, it wasn't with respect to the fee, it was their actual registration program was not within the authority of the department. And so my point isn't necessarily that she's right and the assistant AG is wrong. The point is you have two highly intelligent, competent attorneys and they disagree with each other. And I feel like this resolution doesn't say one is right, one's wrong, but says there's enough uncertainty here that we're going to oppose this registration program.
Any other discussion on the resolution? Great, I think we're ready to vote. Okay, Mr. Gray. Yeah. I think you tell the listening audience that you have smoke coming out of your ears as you think.
No.
Mr. Tackey.
No.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Major?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Lubczewski?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
No.
And Ms. Dodge?
Oh, would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none?
4-4?
It fails 4-4. And with that, we are adjourned.